What's going on, everybody? You're listening to the Point2Point NHL Recap Show, Season 2, Episode 2. I'm Pascal Pryor, joined by Mark Havrilak. Just before we start off, Mark, how's your week been so far, man?
Not too bad, buddy. We're recording this on October 7th. Tomorrow, the season, is, I don't want to say officially getting underway because we did have those two games, but
it's underway.
It feels like it's really actually getting going tomorrow with those 3 games. Pumped to see Leafs Habs on Wednesday night as well. Honestly, dude, just really pumped for the season to get going and kind of seeing how things are going to play out. Pretty excited to talk about the Western Conference today. How you doing, buddy? How's the week's getting started for you?
It's been good so far. I'm with you, man. I'm just getting dialed in for hockey season. I was out golfing today with some of the boys, and today was the first day, I think, like this fall where I had to wear a long sleeve shirt and pants out on the golf course. And you know, when you're having to wear that attire on the golf course, that you're getting close to hockey season, right? Like, so I was just at the golf course, absolutely dialed in, shooting my best round of the year, just thinking about hockey season, all the hockey games we get to watch tomorrow. Unfortunately, I did not break 90. I shot a 93. So I was pretty pissed off about that.
So you're packing it in. This is the last round.
No, I'll probably go out a couple more times this year, but this was the first time I've been out in like 2 months almost.
Okay.
So like my first 3 holes, I think I shot like a 9 and 2 7s, and then after that I shot amazing on the back.
Don't you find like sometimes like when you don't play for a while, you almost like I don't know, like you think you're almost going to be bad when you play again, and it's like you're not. Like I find that happens with me sometimes.
Oh, exactly, man. Like I was terrible the first 3 holes, and then after that I started to play really pretty good. On the back 9, I think I shot a 42 on the back 9. So it's like all I had to do was shoot that, a 45 even, like, and I would have broken 90, but no, I think I shot a 51 on the front 9. So that sort of fucked me on breaking 90. But
Okay.
man, I'm just happy hockey season's back. Well, let's get into the first bit of news here. Jeremy Swayman, he's signed as an RFA. He's going back to Boston. It was a long and ugly negotiation process, but he officially signed on Monday for $66 million for 8 years, and it has an AAV of 8.25. I think it's a fair contract between the two teams. Like, it was an ugly negotiation process, as I just said. Both sides were sort of standing their ground, but ultimately I like the contract. I don't think really there's a loser or a winner in this contract. What do you think about it, though?
Yeah, like we were talking about like what we think he should make, or you asked me and I said 8.5. 8.25, I think, yeah, it's a pretty good number for both sides. You're getting both your goalies now for just over $11 million. I think Swayman's legit. I know he hasn't really had the longevity of playing like kind of the starter's amount of games in the NHL, but like I've said, man, whenever this guy's been called upon in his career, I think he's just kind of excelled. I guess you could say before this past playoffs, he hasn't really had the greatest success in playoffs, but I mean, that's one thing that the Bruins wanted him to improve on, and he was arguably one of the best goalies in the playoffs last year, and he only played in 2 rounds, right? So I think he's kind of just proved everything that he can so far in his career, minus like winning that Stanley Cup. You know what I mean? But he's had great numbers, done it in a tandem role when he's asked to kind of take the load. He has been able to in a shortened span. So I mean, honestly, I've got really high expectations for Jeremy Swayman. I think we could be talking about him even as early as this season, as he's a top 5 goalie in the league, probably even more towards the top 3 in the next couple seasons, I would say. And I think he kind of has that potential and swagger to me that if he ends up being the best goalie in the league when he's like closer to 30 years old, like it wouldn't surprise me one bit. I think he kind of just has that aura about him that you kind of want in a goaltender. Like, he's very dialed in, he's focused, but he's also kind of relaxed, and he's almost like joking around on the ice a little bit. And he obviously he gets phased, but like he doesn't really show it too much. And I think it's honestly something that you need in like a goalie that you need to win a Stanley Cup.
Yeah, I'm with you on this, man. I like the contract. As you mentioned, you can see Swayman as a top 5, top 3 goalie in the next few years. Like, I feel the same about that. When you look at goalies around the NHL that are entering their prime or sort of at the start of the prime, there's like, you think of Swayman, you think of UC Saros, who also just signed his extension this offseason. Thatcher Demko, you can put on that in that conversation maybe, but with him, like, there's a lot of question marks now with that whole injury and how that's gonna play out. And then after that, you sort of go to the younger guys who are a lot more unproven, of course, right? So I could usually see Swayman being top five goalie, if not a top three goalie, for like at least 5 years of his contract, right? Like,
Oh, absolutely, dude. He's what? I think he's 25 or like 26. Like I'm not even 100% sure, but he's kind of mid 20s, right? So like this contract doesn't even really take him like that far into his 30s. Like it's kind of the first couple seasons, right? So it's not even like you're signing like a goalie in unrestricted free agency who's 28, 29 years old and his contract's running till he's 37. Even though some goalies we've been seeing recently can excel later into their 30s, I think more
yeah.
than players do, to be quite honest with you, for the most part. But yeah, I don't really see a huge downside unless he kind of falls off a cliff, but I don't really expect that to happen.
Yeah, I think it's great for both him and Boston. If Boston didn't sign him, it would have worried me a bit going into the season, to be honest. Let's move on to the NHL Global Series, though, that took place over this past weekend. It was the official start of the NHL season, even though it took place in Europe, and there were still preseason games taking place after that. New Jersey Devils, they beat the Buffalo Sabres both Friday and Saturday. They're getting off to a nice little start to the season. What are your overall thoughts, though, on this Global Series? Because to be honest, like, I'm not really the biggest fan of this, man.
No, I don't really like it either. How it's like I don't mind them going over there to promote the game and to get in some actual regular season games, but it's weird how they do it. And there's a kind of a break before the season. I get it's more for like a travel thing for the players to get back and not have to play so many games in such a shortened span because you're trying to make up time. But I don't really like it in that sense. Honestly, like if we're going to talk about the actual games that happen in the play, honestly, I think it was a lot of really good goaltending, dude. We had a couple low scoring games. Markstrom was unbelievable in that first game. Followed up, they gave Jake Allen the start the next night. They both only let in a goal. And Ukko-Pekka Luukkonen, I thought for the Sabres kind of did what he could. And Devon Levi the next day, like we didn't know, is he going to start in the AHL, NHL? Dude, really solid performance from him, dude. I think he stopped like 34 of 37. Definitely wasn't the reason that the Sabres lost. So, I mean, that's kind of a positive when you're on Buffalo's side. But I think more of a negative for them is they haven't made the playoffs. They're starting 0-2 already. They've scored 2 goals in 2 games when offense is supposed to be their specialty. It's not looking good for Buffalo early on. Devils, we both said how good we thought they were going to be this year. I think this is just the start. They're going to be playing really solid defensive hockey. I honestly think if their goalies play just average, that it's going to be good enough, to be honest with you, for them to even be a playoff team. I don't know for like winning the cup, but yeah, just really good Devils team. Sabres, not a good start, man. It's not easy coming back for when you're behind the 8 ball. But I guess the one thing you can't say is that how many times in the last 10 years, 12 years, did Buffalo start off unreal?
Yeah.
And then they fell off a cliff. So I don't know. Maybe it's opposite. Maybe they're going to come back and they'll be 5-2 by the time we do the next podcast. So what did you think about the actual games?
Honestly, I didn't catch too much of the games. The 10 o'clock game on Saturday, I don't think I even woke up until like halfway through the third period. So I was like, I'm not even I'm not even gonna waste
Yeah,
my
that was an
time
early one.
in putting this on. And then the game on Friday, I watched the first 2 periods, then I had to head off to work. But overall, like I like the games. The atmosphere seems great for these games, right? Like you're going over and you get the whole European culture, and like the European fans are completely different and how they cheer for their teams, right? Like you have the chants going on and all that, which is cool to see. But for the global series, man, like it feels weird. It feels a bit too gimmicky. I think last year there was Sweden one where Detroit and the Leafs were playing in that. Like I like that where it's like actually mid-season, but these ones where it's to start off this season and it's like 3, 4, 5 days before all these other teams start playing, and you still have preseason games going on. Like it feels weird. It doesn't feel like actual like meaningful games, right? Like to think that we to,
100%.
to think that Friday night we went from watching those games to watching the rest of the Eastern Conference play their final preseason games, right? Like it just doesn't feel right, and it doesn't feel like it's the actual start of the season. Like when I'm thinking of the actual start of the season, I'm thinking about tomorrow's games, which is the triple header, right? Uh headlined by Florida raising their Stanley Cup banner. Like that's what I feel like the real start of the season is. And I know talking with a lot of people at work, like they sort of feel that way as well, where they don't really like the global series and think it's sort of gimmicky. But we'll see what the NHL does next year, because I think they sort of like this and bringing hockey overseas and really try to grow the fan base of the NHL over there. So I think it's coming back, unfortunately, but we'll have to wait and see. Let's move on to our division breakdowns, though. We're going to start off with the Central Division, then make our way over to the Pacific. The first team we have, though, it's the Dallas Stars. They lost some veteran players this year. Chris Tanev, he goes to Toronto, even though he was only there for half the season last year. Joe Pavelski, though, he retires. That's pretty unfortunate for Dallas to lose him, and especially how great he's in the locker room. They also lose Ryan Suter, Yanni Hakanpää, and Radek Faska. But I like the acquisitions they made. They go out, they get Matt Dumba, they get Ilya Lyubushkin to sort of lock up their defensemen a little bit. And then when you look at their forwards, they don't really bring in any big names on forward. They don't really need a reason to, right? Like, you're going to get a full season of Logan Stankoven. If I was a betting man, which I am, I'd put a little bit of money on Logan Stankoven to win the Calder Cup this year. Or not the Calder Cup, pardon me, the Calder Trophy. Because, like, look at what he did last year in the short amount of time with Dallas, especially in the playoffs. With a full NHL season, man, like, I wouldn't be surprised if this guy thrives. Maverick Bourque, he's another guy that's coming up. We've watched him mark in the AHL over the last few years, just being at work and covering those AHL games, right? Like,
Led
this
the
is a
league in
guy,
points last year.
dude, this is a guy that could make a big impact in the NHL. So it's like, you don't really need, for the Dallas Stars, they don't need to go out and get those big guys in free agency, or because you have these two guys coming up, and it looks like right now they're gonna be playing on the third line. Like, man, that's a great third line if you can have Logan Stankoven, Maverick Bourque, and Jamie Benn. Like, I like this team a lot. I know I was sort of sucking them off last year in our preseason breakdowns. I think I had like Heiskanen winning the Norris. I'd what's his face in goal. I can't even think of it right now.
Sure.
I'd Ottinger winning the Vezina. Like, I think I had them winning the cup. Like, I was sucking this team off last year. I'm sucking them off again this year. I like this team, man. I like this team. How do you think about them?
Yeah, dude, roster wise, they're pretty legit. Like, I think they're up there to be a cup contender. Once again, I will disagree with you in the fact that I don't really think they had the greatest offseason, though, to be quite honest with you. I think they could have probably made a couple different moves. I don't really understand why they need Dumba and Lyubushkin when that's kind of committing like $6.5 million to like what I think are two bottom pairing defensemen at this point. I think Dumba's just kind of fallen off a cliff. Like, I'd be more paying, like, I would be comfortable paying both guys like half of what they got. Like, I don't think like I wouldn't give Lyubushkin over $3 million. It's just he's too one-dimensional and he just doesn't provide enough offense. Dumba's not really providing a lot of offense anymore. Not that these guys can't help them. I just think that they could have maybe utilized their cap space a little bit better. Joe Pavelski, that is going to hurt a bit. I will say, I think last season was pretty underwhelming for him compared to a lot of other years. You could really tell in the playoffs as well. So I think you're exactly right. A full season of Logan Stankoven, that's definitely replacing Pavelski's production even from a couple of years ago. Maverick Bourque stepping in. I'm curious to see what kind of leap Wyatt Johnson's taken this year. Is he a point per game? Is he going to have any consideration for this Team Canada? Oh, I don't know, dude. If he's a point per game, he might. You never really know. But I think this team's definitely legit again. They're going to be fighting to win their division. They're going to be fighting to win the Stanley Cup. Another like notable signing, solid deal for Thomas Harley, $4 million for 2 years. Dude, he had like 45 points last year, like 16 goals as a defenseman, like really solid season from him. That was a really solid contract. So, and they also got a new backup goalie in Casey DeSmith, 3 years, $1 million a year. I mean, he's probably not going to play a ton. They're hoping Ottinger can have a bit better of a season than he did last year. And it's like, dude, if that 900 goes to a 910, it's like, I don't have any doubt that they're not winning this division.
Yeah, that's the one other thing I was going to bring up was, like, look at how good this team was last year, and that's without Jake Ottinger playing at the top of his game, right? Like, if he can return to playing at the top of his game, sort of like look at him when he was playing in that series against the Calgary Flames, sort of when he broke out. Like, he didn't need to be that good, but if he can sort of return to that form and how he was playing back then, like, man, I think this team is gonna easily finish first in this division, and I don't really see him finishing anywhere outside of first. But it's going to be interesting for me. Wyatt Johnson, as you mentioned too, like what kind of step can he take? I love this guy's game, man. Like I think he can be a point per game player for sure. He's playing on a dominant line, man. He's playing with Rope Hinson, Jason Robertson, right? Like there's no reason these guys shouldn't be dominating each and every night. So I'm looking forward to watching the Dallas Stars this season. The next team we have up, it's the Winnipeg Jets. They had some interesting moves over the offseason. Biggest one though, they lost their head coach in Rick Bowness, but replacing him is Scott Arniel. He was an associate coach to Rick Bowness for the last few seasons. I don't really know how I feel about this team, man. I feel like they lost some key players, even though they weren't there for the whole season. Like they lost Sean Monahan, they lost Tyler Toffoli, Brendan Dillon's out, Laurent Brossoit. Like we all know how good he was last year when he had to go in for Connor Hellebuck on back-to-backs and just take some of the load off him. And they bring in Eric Comrie, Hayden Fleury. They don't really bring in anybody big. Like I'm not too much of a fan of this team heading into the season. How are you feeling about them?
You know what I think about this team, dude? I think they're the definition of mid.
Hell yeah, brother.
I don't think this team's making the playoffs. I
Okay.
think they were really good last year. They've played some really solid defense. I will give Scott Arniel some credit. I don't know if you remember, Rick Bowness stepped away because of a personal issue with his wife. Something happened. Scott Arniel was the guy who took over, and they were playing some pretty good hockey under him. So I think they feel like they can continue to do that. So honestly, they want to give the guy a shot. I mean, we talk about coaches being recycled around the league, right? It's like giving a new guy a shot. I don't really have a problem with it. So I just don't think that, and it's hard for this team, right? Because it's hard to attract free agents. They don't want to go to Winnipeg. You have to do it internally or via trade. I was more the last couple of years, besides the last year, to get Cheveldayoff fired. I think, to be honest with you, the Hellebuck extension, the Scheifele extension, that Dubois trade, I think it's okay he's got a job, to be honest with you. My mind kind of changed.
Yeah.
I don't like this offseason, though. I think that he just didn't really do much, and I think he thinks that this team's going to be good enough the way they are. I just don't. They're not their one solid defensive defenseman, because I like DeMello a lot, but their one like physical defensive defenseman is gone in Brendan Dillon. Logan Stanley, like, I mean, he's a big guy, but he's not overly physical, and he doesn't play every night.
And he's
defense is a little bit concerning to me. To be honest with you, I think Josh Morrissey's legit, but it's like he's more of an offensive guy. The thing with them, though, it's like they're going to have a chance to win a lot of games if Hellebuck's playing at the top of his game. Like, that's the one thing you can't discredit. I just don't think that this team is going to make the playoffs. I just don't see it this year. I think they're going to be competing. They're going to be in it. I think at the end of the day, I have 4 teams in each division making the playoffs in the West. I think they're going to be coming in 5th in this division.
See, honestly, I think they get in that last wild card spot, man. Like the only reason I think that is I just think Connor Hellebuck is that good, right?
Do you have 5 teams in this division making, or 4?
I have 4 and 4. I have 4 and 4.
Okay.
I just think Connor Hellebuck's that good, man, that he's going to be able to steal them enough games for them to sneak into the playoffs in a wild card spot, right?
See, that's a fair point. Like, and I could definitely see that happening. Like, he's done that before. It's just I'm not very optimistic about the way this team kind of went forward this offseason.
The other thing too that I'm sort of interested to see is like Nikolai Ehlers. Like he looked like a really promising young talent when he came to the league. I don't know if he's fully lived up to it, right? But he's still a decently young player. Like what can he do this season?
Well, there's a lot of noise around him too, right? Like he's in the last year of his contract. Is he going to stay? Is he going? Like, what are the Jets going to do about that? Like, are they going to potentially let him walk for nothing? Maybe they're not really in it at the deadline. They move him. So who knows? Yeah, I don't know. Like, I don't really see him wanting to stay that bad, but I also thought the same thing about Scheifele and Hellebuck. So time will tell.
It's going to be a prove it year for him, though. And the other guy too is Cole Perfetti, right? He just signed a Braves deal, so he's going to be looking to prove that he's the player we all think he's going to be, and to get that next big contract. So it's like having them on the second line playing together, like, will that second line be able to really flourish and have a breakout year? Because if they can, and then you have that top line that they have, and you have the goaltending that they do in Connor Hellebuck, then yeah, I do think they sneak in the playoffs. If that second line doesn't take that step that I think they will be doing, then Connor Hellebuck's really gonna have to stand on his head this season, which the way he's played over the last 5, 6, 7 years, like, it wouldn't surprise me at all if he had an amazing season. Next team we're gonna move on to, though, it's the Colorado Avalanche. This team, it it had a decent bit of changeover. They lose Sean Walker, Zach Parise, Andrew Colliano. A couple older players sort of walk out, and they bring in Oliver Shillington, Calvin DeHaan, Parker Kelly. For me, the other interesting thing too is Casey Middlestat. He's going to be in his first full season with the Colorado Avalanche. Like, we all know how bad they've really been looking for that 2C since Nazem Kadri left after they won the cup. I think they found in Casey Middlestat. I think he's going to flourish as the second line center, playing behind Nathan McKinnon. How do you feel about this team?
Yeah, like this team, man, like I think they're obviously still a really solid team, and it's hard not to be when you've got um, the caliber of talent in their top three players, right? Like, you're always going to have a chance. I think they got a lot of question marks, though. To be quite honest with you, one, goaltending. They're running that same tandem with Georgiev and Annunen. Is Georgiev going to play 65 games again and just be overworked? And I just don't. I'm not convinced he's a starting goalie in this league, to be honest with you. Do they make a move mid-season? Are they rolling with him for the last year of his contract here? We'll see. I think their defense is completely fine. Obviously, there's a bit of turnover there. Sean Walker's gone. I really like Calvin DeHaan kind of as a bottom pairing guy, kind of more of a shutdown guy, but I think you need that. When you're in Colorado, obviously Devon Taves plays that style too, but deeper in the lineup, right? Penalty kill. They've got guys that can move the puck, Gerard, Makar. But I think it's a pretty solid pickup on defense. And Oliver Shillington, he's another guy you can move the puck. He's a very good skater. That you're familiar with, obviously. So I'm still really liking their defense, and I don't think that that's much of a problem right now. I think their questions are more in net and up front. Obviously, if you're running like Lehkonen with McKinnon and Rantanen, it's a really solid line. Well, Lehkonen doesn't look like he's ready to start the season. Nichushkin's in the player assistance program where he's not even allowed to play in the league yet. Like, he has to be approved to be back in, right? I don't know if that's gonna happen. Like, we don't really know, right? I'm not saying no, I'm not saying yeah. Landeskog, it seems pretty likely he's coming back. We just have no idea when. There's no timetable right now. But it seems like he's going to be playing at least most of the season. Like, how much is that, though? Like, is that 50 games? Is it 75 games? They're going to be in it because of their talent. If McKinnon's having the season that he had last year, and we're talking about Makar for the Norris, like, they're going to be a playoff team, no doubt. It's just that I don't know about them as like a legitimate cup contender right now. To be quite honest with you, I think there is a lot of problems, but it's like they have the foundation where if they're adding the pieces, like it can change really fast, right? Like they've got the superstars. It's more just the surrounding cast. You know what I mean? So I have this team making the playoffs. I have them coming in third in their division, but I'm not convinced and have them as a legitimate cup contender right now.
No, I'm with you on that. I have this team making the playoffs as well, but I don't see him as a legitimate cup contender unless they get some of these pieces back and they're playing how they were when they left, right? Like, if Nutrition comes back and he's playing where he left off, if Landeskog comes back and he's back to a normal self, then yeah, this team could be a cup contender. But after the amount of time, pardon me, that Landeskog has missed, like, is he really going to be able to come back and have the impact that he once had when Colorado was going on those cup runs, right? Like, Nichushkin, we don't even know if he's coming back. Like, there's a strong possibility that he doesn't come back at all this season, and if he doesn't, like, that's a pretty decent hole you have to fill. Callum Ritchie, to me, like, I want to see what he can do this year.
Yeah, very interested to see what he can do.
Can he make some sort of impact? Like, honestly, I like his game a lot, man. He's a bigger forward. He can get his way to the net, doesn't get pushed around too much. I know Colorado likes those players. He can look at Nathan McKinnon, who's a guy just like that, like a bigger forward who really just plays bully ball or bully hockey, as you'd say. So I'm interested to see what Cal Murchie can do, but for me, this team needs to add a few pieces or get some of those pieces back and performing how they were for them to be full-on cup contenders. I have them finishing third in this division. Um, no slight to them, but we got to see what
Yeah,
they can
like,
do.
and just one more thing about it, like, I don't necessarily think it's like they had a bad off season. Like, I think they're kind of limited because they have a lot
Yeah,
of question marks right now with what they can do with cap space. Like, when you look at who they lost compared to who they got, it's like they kind of lost some depth guys, gained some depth guys. Walker's probably the best guy there, but it's like I'm not really that concerned about that. Like, I think their defense is still completely fine, but it's like, dude, 7 million for Landeskog, 6.25 for Nichushkin, it's $13 million. Like, if you have no idea if they're coming back or not, like, what are you really supposed to do in the offseason, right? Like, they're gonna have to rely on making mid-season moves and like figure out what is happening with these players, like in the next little while.
yeah. Their GM there definitely has, yeah, a stressful job going into this season with some of the moves that he might have to make and sort of managing that cap going through the season. Let's move on though to the Nashville Predators. Honestly, I think this team had the most interesting and probably the best offseason if you're sort of giving teams grades out. They lose Askarov, their sort of young goaltender, but whatever. They locked up UC Soros long term, right? So they have their number one goalie. They lose Jason Zucker, Anthony Beauvillier, Ryan McDonough, he's also out the door. But we'll look at who they bring in, man. You bring in Steven Stamkos, you bring in Jonathan Marsh, so Brady Shea comes in. Like they might have signed the best two UFAs this season and one of the top five, if not top three defensemen UFAs this year, right? Like I love the moves this team made. Where do you sort of have them in this division?
Man, I think these guys are pretty legit. Like, let's think about their team last year, dude. How we
Yeah.
probably didn't even have them in the playoffs. Brunette comes in as the coach, has got them playing this different style while still being like a good defensive team, like they've always been. Man, what a great offseason, I think, for Barry Trotz to kind of like take a stamp on being a GM in this league. You can say whatever about Stamkos making 8 million bucks, but it's like, dude, I would take that risk. I'm sorry. Like the fact that he could score 40 goals, they're gonna have a pretty deadly top six, to be quite honest with you. Their defense are still looking really solid as well. McDonough out, Brady Shea in. Don't the Shea contract's a bit iffy to me over time, but man, you got to think about it though. Like Nashville's been ever since they made that cup final. Like I don't want to say they've been mid, but like they've been good enough to make the playoffs. They've couple rounds. Then they kind of go in this different direction of trading guys, and then they sign these guys that are older, and it's like they're going for a cup. But if you think about it, like Forsberg's 30,
Yeah.
Yossi's 33, Saros is 29 or 30, whatever. Like they already have kind of an older core. So it's
Yeah.
like kind of going for it now. Like it makes sense, dude. Like if you're Yossi and Forsberg and Saros, like over the past year and a bit of what's happened from being a retooling to like this, like, dude, you got to be thrilled. Like, how
Oh
could you
yeah.
not be happy, dude? Like, I think this team is going to be really good. I've got them coming in second in this division. Um, it does suck losing Askarov. Pretty high on him as a goalie prospect. But the way I see it, dude, is that he nothing against him, but he hasn't proved anything in the NHL. And it's like you've got a guy who's an absolute no doubt top 10 goalie in this league. He's been consistent his entire career ever since he took over for Rene and even as his backup. Like, why not keep him if he wants to stay? Dude, he also stayed at 7.75, which I think is a bargain for
Oh
him.
yeah.
Like, I think he could have been asking for Swayman money,
That
or
guy, yeah,
probably even
no.
more. Like
That guy almost fucked Swayman on the deal. Like Swayman
oh,
swore that they were having
100%.
such
Like,
a
I
hard time
think
getting
out of
that deal.
anything,
Yeah.
he lowballed it compared to some of these other goalies. Like, he could have got somewhere in the eights, I think, right? So
Yeah.
he's also willing to take a discount because he likes it there. It's like, why not keep him? You know what I mean? And dude, one thing people don't realize about this team, dude, they've got 3 first-round picks this year. They've got the pick from the
I
Askarov
didn't realize
deal.
that.
They've got the pick from the Askarov deal, and then they got the pick from the Tanner Jeannot deal.
Yeah,
From
so it's like
so you don't
you
think
look at
this
what they
team's
could
going
add.
out and doing something at the deadline? And here's the thing, too, dude. They're not doing anything right now, but if that Ryan Johansson termination grievance doesn't go in Johansson's favor, then Nashville is also going to have $4 million more of cap space because they retained $4 million on that deal when they dealt him to Colorado. So Trotz, dude, he's got a lot of things in his favor, man. He's not doing anything because right now that $4 million is technically free, right? The contract's terminated, but if something happens with the grievance and it's made that like there's still some sort of cap hits that he probably doesn't want to go out and spend that money right now until he's 100% sure, right? But dude, he's got 3 first-round picks and a potential $4 million in cap space. Like, I think this team could be scary deadline time, dude.
Oh, I agree with you. I think this team could look very frightening going into the playoffs. I have them finishing second in this division. Like the only thing that I have a question mark with this team is just the age. Like it is an older core, as you mentioned, and all the players that they brought in this season are older. So it's like, is there a lot of regression there? Because if there's a lot of regression there, then they're not as scary of a team as we think. But like, I don't think that's going to be the case, man, at all. I think these players are all going to flourish together. Like Ryan O'Reilly, when he went there last year from Toronto, we sort of were like, okay, like that's a good signing, but Ryan O'Reilly's on the back nine of his career. Ryan O'Reilly went there, and he was looking like a old self last year, right? So
yeah, but I don't know. Like they do have I just think they got a good mix, right? Like they got the puck moving, solid all around number one D in Yossi. They've got the number one goalie. They've got Forsberg, who scored 40 goals a couple times. You just brought in 2 guys that have scored 40 goals. You've got that reliable two-way center who can chip in offensively in Ryan O'Reilly. And then they do have some youth still, dude, like Luke Evangelista, like Tomasino. They're expecting a lot from him this year. So it's like, I do get what you mean. It is an older core in that, but they still got some youth and like speed on that team as well. And like one guy a lot of people don't really talk about, like an underrated point getter, is Tommy Novak. Like he might be playing in the top 6, dude, between Stamkos and Marchessault. Like we don't even really know. So like he might be like a sneaky fantasy pickup, dude. Like he's had 45 points in a season before. Like he might be getting up to 60. Like wouldn't surprise me one bit, man.
yeah, it wouldn't surprise me at all too much. I like this team a lot heading into the season. Let's move on to the St. Louis Blues, though. They honestly, man, they also had a pretty decent offseason for sort of the team that they are. They don't really lose any key pieces, but they bring in Dylan Holloway, Philip Broberg. We all know the drama that played out there with the offer sheets and them coming over from Edmonton. First of all, what do you think about those signings there and just how that whole process sort of played out?
Yeah, it's kind of interesting. I mean, like I guess they really like the players and they put Edmonton in a really tough situation, but I think that like obviously Krug's not playing this year. That freed up $6.5 million. Kind of gave them the opportunity to like offer sheet both of them. Like almost kind of like covered the money in that sense. Kind of weird for Broberg to get that much after playing like 71 career regular season games. I don't know. Like I think this team's probably a little bit better roster wise, but like they still don't really scare me that much. I just kind of look at them and I'm like, I might be one of the only people that think this, but I think Binnington had an incredible season last year. Like I think he potentially was like a top 5 goalie in the league last year. Like if you tell me that, I'm not really disagreeing with you. It's just like the team's going to have to be better and he's going to have to play that good. Like I don't know. Like I don't see it happening. I kind of probably see them finishing around where they were last year. They did definitely make some interesting ads to get younger, though, because I think that they were kind of like an older team, especially on defense. Like Falk, Crew, Parayko, you bring in a guy like Broberg, Pierre-Olivier Joseph. His brother's coming in, too, from Ottawa. He's playing up front. They also brought in Alexander Texier from the Columbus Blue Jackets. So this team is definitely getting younger, and they seem like they want to go in that direction. But I don't know if they're good enough right now. One guy, though, that I think might have a monster year, and he had a great year last year, is Robert Thomas. He had 86 points last year. I think he's the type of player, not like consistently, but I think there's going to be a year or two in his career where he hits 100 points. I think he's that talented and he's that good of a playmaker that like, I think he had 62 assists last year. He's a guy that I can honestly see, at least for a couple seasons, floating around 70 assists. I don't think he's going to be like consistently like that for the rest of his career, but guys, sometimes they just kind of hop up there for a season or two and go down. I think he's kind of got that potential, man. And I think he's kind of a bull up there, kind of a legit number one center that a lot of people don't talk about. And to be honest with you, I would probably have him on Team Canada to start the Four Nations Cup. And I do think he probably will make the team, and because of his GM.
Yeah, like when I look at this team, I like some of their players. I think they have some pieces, but I think they're also lacking a lot of pieces. Like to have a first Robert Thomas, you were just talking about him. Like I love him as well. He's a great player, but to have a top line of Robert Thomas, Jake Neighbors, and Dylan Holloway, like I'm not a big fan of that top line. Not like that doesn't scare me
No,
too
but
much,
like
right? Like
they're obviously spreading out their talent a little bit with
yeah.
like obviously Buchnevich and Kyrou as well still. But yeah, like I mean that's not too great. Neighbors is definitely a guy to keep an eye on though. He had like 27 goals last year. He's only like 22 years old, so I mean, you could see some progression from him. But yeah, like he's not a top line player like anything close to that at this point. That's seems like a little bit odd of a top line, even especially even with Holloway as well. Like I
For
probably wouldn't even
me,
have Holloway in my top six.
for me, I find this team is just sort of not committing to a rebuild, but also they're not really fully committing to winning, right? Like they're sort of just stuck in the middle right now. Honestly, I'm not a big fan of this team. I don't think Bennington's gonna have the same year that he had last year. I honestly have him finishing seventh in the division, man. Like that
Really?
that might be a little low, but I'm higher on some of these other teams, man. I like some of these other teams a bit more than I like the St. Louis team. Maybe that's going to come back to bite me in the ass. Honestly, it probably will, considering half my takes last year came back to bite me in the ass. But hey, that's what we're here for. We're
Honestly,
here for the
just
hot
just
takes.
looking at everything, I think I might even have them at seventh as well.
Yeah, like I just think they're old. They're like they have some interesting pieces, but outside of those interesting pieces, pardon me, they're just sort of like okay, like blah, nothing, nothing there's excite me too much. Let's move on though to the Minnesota Wild. They had a pretty quiet offseason. You can sort of see why with like the cap struggles they've been in with those buyouts for the last few years though. Honestly, man, I sort of like this team. I don't have them making the playoffs, but how are you feeling about them?
Man, this might sound crazy, dude, but I think they're gonna come in last in this division.
That's okay. I think that is a little bit
I don't
crazy.
know, dude. I don't see like I kind of see them, Minnesota and St. Louis as like the bottom. Chicago's obviously in the conversation too, but I think Chicago's kind of like surrounded Bedard pretty good enough to like
Yeah.
get them out of last place. To be quite honest with you, like I've got Chicago coming in sixth in this division, and kind of St. Louis, Minnesota, and like the bottom two. I just think Minnesota, like a lot of guys are coming off some down years, but I don't really like what they've done recently. Yeah, they are limited cap space wise, but dude, they made a lot of in-season re-signings to bring back guys that have already on this team and they weren't playing well to begin with. Like
Yeah.
they brought back Hartman mid-season. He's got a new contract. Zuccarello, yeah, he's still a good player. He's still coming back as well. Marcus Foligno, like they had opportunities to like kind of change the team up a little bit, and I think they just didn't. And yeah, for having $14 million of dead money sucks, dude. Like you could have another superstar and like another top six, top four defenseman, or like even better depth or something, right? Like I think we might be talking about this team a lot differently next year. I don't know, man. I don't like, is Faber gonna be as legit as he was last year? Honestly, I think probably, but they might have a trouble staying healthy. To be honest, I don't really trust their goaltending. I don't know if that Gustafson season was kind of like just a one-off when he was unreal. Fleury, he's obviously doing his last year. I just think he's kind of on the back nine at this point.
Yeah.
But I guess we'll see. Like Kaprizov, is he getting 100 points? Like Boldy, does he take that jump? I might be a little bit too hard on this team, but it's like I don't really think they're going to be terrible, but I think they might be like near the bottom. Like this is a pretty like I'd say this is a pretty like decent division where it's like I don't think any team like really like a sucks that bad, to be
No, I
honest
don't.
with you. Like Chicago did last year, and it's like the same thing with the Atlantic. Like I don't know if any team really sucks like that bad. It's just like someone's got to come in last, and I think that like they might have another down year, and I think that though they might just end up being near the bottom.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. I have this team finishing sixth. Honestly, like for me, it's like, what can Matt Boldy do? Can he take another step and become even more of a threat than he already is? Marco Rossi, that's a really interesting one, right? Like right now, it looks like he's projected to play on that top line with Kaprizov. When he got drafted, man, we all like a lot of people were thinking this guy was going to be a very top end talent in the NHL, and he hasn't really proven that so far. So it's like, what can he do this season? I sort of want to see Brock Faber. Can he sort of carry on and take another step compared to what he did last season? Honestly, I think he can, man. Like having Jared Spurgeon back, it's going to help out with that a little bit. Like last year, it was really Brock Faber on that
Yeah,
back
ease the
end
load a bit.
where it's going to it's going to ease up the load a little bit. And then as you mentioned the goaltending, like yeah, I'm not that big of a fan of their goaltending, but they have that Jasper Wallstead kid. I hope I'm
Yeah, dude.
saying
I
it right
wonder. I
in the
wonder how
system.
much
Like
action he's gonna get because, like Askarov, like he got traded and then signed that extension for next year. Wallstead also just got an extension for next year today, actually, 2 times 2.2. So I wonder how much action he's gonna see. I know since like the couple games he has played, he hasn't looked too good in the NHL, but I think that they think he needs at least one more year of development. But we'll see if he ends up making the NHL. If these guys don't play well, I think he's getting an opportunity sooner than later.
yeah, I think it'll be an interesting season for Minnesota. I think it's for them. It's just sort of staying afloat while they're getting through this cap hell, and then they got some nice prospects in the system, right? And then really focus on re-signing Kaprizov. And when you re-sign him to that deal, if he does re-sign, then they're going to be really trying to build a championship contending team. Let's move on to the Utah Hockey Club and their first season in the NHL. I like this team a little bit, man. I don't have them getting in the playoffs. I still think they need a little bit more pieces to get into the playoffs, but out goes JJ Moser in the Ryan McDonough trade or
Sergachev.
Sergachev trade, pardon me. Wrong Tampa defenseman. Nate Smith goes out. Travis Boyd. You lose Travis Dermott, but they bring in Sergachev as we just mentioned. John Marino comes in. I like the Ian Cole pickup, and then Kevin Stanley comes in as well. How are you feeling about them?
Dude, I like this team. I think they got a lot better this offseason. I think that last year they were kind of going in a right direction until all the noise came out about them moving, where they going. I think it got to their heads a lot. And it kind of affected their performance on the ice. There's no more distractions with this team, dude. They're there. The only thing they don't know yet is what they're going to be called, their team name. They've got an arena. They seem happy with everything that's going on. Dude, this defense looks a lot better, man.
Yep.
Like you bring in a guy who you can debate is Sergachev a number one D, is he not? I think he's at very least a number two guy. You bring in John Marino, who I think is a really solid defensive defenseman. He can play in the top four. Then you're talking about other guys in their top four, like Valimaki, Jersey. That's not bad either, dude. Like, and then you bring in Ian Cole for the bottom pair. Like, I'd say it's probably an above average decor, to be quite honest with you. Like,
Yeah,
especially
I think
bringing in
they're
Sergachev, they kind of lack that top end guy, first pairing guy before. Like, I do like JJ Moser a lot, but it's like, I don't think he's not that top pairing guy, right? So it's like they're looking pretty good defensive wise. In net, Vejmelka kind of had a rough year last year. Ever since Connor Ingram's been there, dude, he's been great. I think if he can continue what he's doing, they're going to be completely fine, at least in net. Up front, it's a pretty similar team, but honestly, a lot of young guys are getting older and they're getting more developed. They named Clayton Keller captain. I think that was a pretty good idea. He's been there a long time. He's been through a lot. You know what I mean? He comes in with a positive attitude, getting better all the time. I am really interested to see two guys on this team this year. How many points and progression of Logan Cooley? And honestly, dude, I think Dylan Gunther's got the potential to be a 40 goal scorer. I don't
oh
know if he's doing it
yeah.
this year, but he's got that potential. This is a young team. I think that we are going to see kind of like a Philadelphia vibe from last year with this team.
I could
And
see that, man.
honestly, I've got this team making the playoffs. I've got them coming in a wild card spot.
See, for me, I have this team finishing fifth. I think they're for sure gonna be better than last year, but I think they're just gonna fall short of the playoffs. As you mentioned, like Logan Cooley, Dylan Gunther. I want to see what kind of steps those guys can take. Like Dylan Gunther, I'm all with you that I think this guy's going to be a 40 goal scorer, man. Like he's showing
Dude,
all
he
the
gets
signs that he
that
can be.
extension. I have never been so like confident in an extension for a guy who's played like never even played a full NHL season because he's like in the AHL, WHL, NHL. But bro, he had like 18 goals in his last like 20 something games last year, I think it was. Like he looks like he's gonna be legit.
Well, I think the second line is gonna be really fun to watch, but with him and Cooley playing together, like man, like talk about two young dynamic players that I think are just gonna feed off each other's energy. I'm really gonna look forward to watching that. Their defensive core, as you mentioned, like man, it took a big jump. I just think there's some more teams in this division that scare me a bit more than they do. I think they're just a bit young and still a bit too inexperienced to really
Okay.
make that real playoff push, but I have them finishing fifth, and hey, man, like that's no slander to them. I just think one more year of letting these players grow, bring up some of these more prospects that they have in the system going into the season after, and then it's playoff time, and for them to really start to go on some runs. But it's
And they
just
got a lot of
from
assets, right? Like they've
yeah,
got the picks, they've got prospects. Like they gave away one of their better prospects in that Sergachev deal in Connor Geeky, but they have to, man, if you want a player that good in Sergachev, right? So who knows if they end up doing that again with it, like to go get another guy. You know what I mean?
honestly, like if they were, I don't want to say buyers come trade deadline time, but if they were sort of like conservative buyers and they were going out and maybe getting like a younger player that still has term left, like that wouldn't surprise me to see them doing that come trade
Yeah.
deadline time. Let's move on to the last team in this division, though. It's the Chicago Blackhawks. This team honestly had a lot of turnover, man. Tyler Johnson, he's out. Nikita Zaitsev, Taylor Radish, Jared Tianordi. They bring in Tyler Bertuzzi, Teuvo Teravainen, Laurent Brossoit, Alec Martinez, Ilya Mikheyev, Craig Smith, Pat Maroon. Dude, I'm with you, man, that this team did a great job bringing in a lot of veteran players to sort of surround Connor Bedard and this whole younger generation of prospects coming to the Chicago lineup. Like I really like what they did this offseason. I
Dude, like
go
all
ahead.
the guys you brought in, you even forgot one too, and TJ Brody. Like they
Yeah.
brought in a ton of guys this offseason, a lot of
Honestly,
guys that are veterans, you know? What's that?
I just didn't mention TJ Brody because like the Flames
Came from the
fan in
league.
me fucking hates him, but he's
Yeah.
he's irrelevant to me, you know? But
Man, I'm just so happy Bedard's gonna have guys to play with. Like Hall
yeah.
was this one guy last year. He's injured so fast. It's like, dude, if he's playing with Tyler Bertuzzi and Tuevo Teravainen, dude, like Bedard's gonna be putting up some numbers this year, I think. This team, they're trending in the right direction. They are, I don't think they're anywhere close to like being a playoff team, to be quite honest.
No.
I think they might, but to be honest, dude, if they come out of the gate buzzing the first month of the year, I wouldn't be that surprised. I think that they're talented enough to like kind of like make pushes at times to like looking like a good team. Obviously, some of these guys are like on the back nines of their careers, but I think that they're surrounding Bedard with some like good pros, good leaders, guys that are still like solid NHL players, and it's good that they just didn't bring in like the older guys like that are veterans. Like they went out and got a guy in his older 20s in Bertuzzi who can play with Bedard and like put up numbers. Teravainen, like he's known to be a really good passer. Like that might look good with Bedard. Like even we might see Taylor Hall again with him. You know what I mean? So I mean,
Yeah.
there's options that you can surround Bedard with. Obviously, they re-signed a couple guys that were on their team last year. Like Nick Foligno's coming back. He's the captain is now. Athanasiou got re-signed. Jason Dickinson. So I mean, they kind of had like, dude, like they basically had like over half of their roster open before they re-signed guys and went out and signed guys as well, right? So I think they're just looking like a lot better team than they were last year. Like they were definitely one of the worst teams in the league last year. And I just think at this point that they're going to make a little bit of an improvement in the standings, and I think they're going to come in sixth. I just don't really think that they're the worst team in this division. The one thing I will say though is like their goaltending could be a complete fucking wild card. Like
Yeah.
Mrazek's either really good or like the worst goalie in the league. Brossoit, like I don't know. He's been a really Brossoit to me is kind of like Stolars, where like he's a really good backup. He's never
Yep.
played a ton, but it's like when you've given him the opportunity, he's played very well. So, and they're both in similar situations now where like they have a chance to win the number one job, you know? So I don't know. I compare Brossoit to Stolars. I think it's a good signing for 2 years. Get Mrazek some help because they had Soderblom last year and he was friggin' terrible. So at least they got like at least like I'd say it's a below average tandem, but like it's improved. You know what I mean? So I don't know. I do like what Chicago's doing here. I think their GM's doing a good job. They obviously draft Levshinov at number 2. He signed as well, not making the team at camp at least because of an injury. So curious to see if he gets in at any point this year. One guy though, I'm curious. I don't know. Do you know much about like Kevin Korchinski?
I like him a lot as a
So
player.
he's playing. He's starting in the AHL.
Yeah. See,
I'm kind of
honestly,
surprised about that, man. Like in like 71 games last year, like only put up 16 points, but like played a lot of minutes, great skater, like looks solid. I wonder if it's more just like they've signed all these guys and he'd be more of a bottom pairing guy and they want him to like be a number 1 defenseman in the AHL, like kind of like almost like what like the Kings are doing with Brant Clark before, you know?
I completely think it's that, man. Like the thing I was going to sort of bring up with Chicago, when you look at this team compared to last year, they brought in the players they brought in that are veteran players, like they can play, right? Where like some of the players that they brought in last year, like aren't aren't top 6 players at that point in their career or
Right.
aren't top end producers. Where it's like this year they sort of go out and get those guys. So it's like you're gonna be able to allow your younger players. You're not gonna have to rush those guys to the NHL, right? Like I think with Korshinsky being in the NHL last year, he was a bit rushed just because it's like who else on their rosters are they really going to put in there? Where now it's like you go out and you sign those players that you can really put in your lineup and be playing. So Korshinsky can go down to the AHL, dominate down there, sort of really develop as a defenseman. Where it's like if he's playing in the NHL and he, he's not getting those top end minutes, or if he is playing in the NHL but he's just not fully up to par and he's I don't want to say getting dominated every night, but you know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
not able to really show his true talent, then why not send him down to the HL and just let him
Yeah, he's
progress
gonna have a
down there,
great
right?
pair, great partner in Lepshinov too, right? So,
Oh, that's going to be a nasty pairing
so
in the
like
Central Division.
besides Bedard, like 2 guys at least. When I say these things, it's more like I'm looking progression from young guys. 2 guys
Yeah.
that I really gonna have my eye on this year is Philip Kurashev.
Yep.
Um, he kind of had a breakout year last year, 54 points. Played a lot with Bedard. Curious to see, does he play a lot with Bedard again? Does he kind of juggle through the lineup? How does he do when he's not with Bedard? And another guy is Lucas Reichel. Um,
Okay.
he's a first round pick from a couple years ago now. I honestly, at this point, kind of expected him to be a little bit better than he's currently at. He was kind of not really good enough to stick around in the NHL last year and went down to Rockford for a bit, back up. So curious to see if he's able to kind of make a jump this season because I think he was like a 16th overall pick in like 2020 or 2021. Kind of had high expectations for him. And I think he's kind of been a little bit underwhelming so far. So those are 2 guys on this team that I'm really curious to see how they do this season.
For me, another guy I just want to add into that sort of conversation is Alex Vlasic there on the back end. He's
Dude,
still
he
only
is a
23 years
very
old.
underrated player.
Yeah, like
Like,
want to see what kind of step he can take, right? Like he's still a young player, and I think he still has a lot to prove. So it's like, he really show that? Because when you talk about this team going forward in the future, like the big defensemen you talk about, of course, are Krasinski and then Levshinov now. But it's like Vlasic, could he be like a really like I think he could be a really good number 3.
well, honest, I'm gonna be honest with you, dude. Like, he's not as good skating wise, but he's better defensively. Reminds me a lot of like the progression and the age right now of Gooley.
That's honestly a guy I was sort of
So
thinking
it's
about in the back of
like
my head.
Gooley, we talk about being a potential number 2 guy. Can he ever be a number 1 if he puts up enough numbers? Like it's the same thing with Vlasic, dude. He's more of a defensive style, but it's like, does he turn into a guy like a Jonas Brodin or something? Like, you know what I
Yeah,
mean?
it's definitely going to be an interesting team to keep an eye on. For me, I have them finishing last in the division. I just think that
Okay.
they're still young. I think that at some point they're going to sort of want to bring some of these younger players up. And I think come trade deadline, it wouldn't surprise me at all if they had like 3, 4 players just out on the move, right? Because it's
To get some
Te-
picks and
like
stuff. Yeah.
Teravainen, right? Like you talk about Teravainen, like he's a good player, but he's been a little bit injured over the last couple of years. If he comes out and he's on pace for like a 60-point season, like come on, man, you're not telling me that some playoff team's going to want to be having him on the third line, right? Like
Yeah.
same thing with Bertuzzi or even Taylor Hall. Like I could see some of these guys on the Chicago Blackhawks team getting some very serious looks from around the league come trade deadline team. So
So like when you say
that's
they're gonna
just
finish last, like do you kind of think like they're not really gonna be like pushed around and shit though? Like they're gonna like probably compete in a lot of games and stuff like that and just kind of come out on like the losing side of it? Or do you think like there's just a lot of teams that are a lot better and they might get like blown out like
I just think
frequently, but like you know what I mean?
I think there's some teams that are better. I think they'll compete this year. I think without a doubt they're a better team than last year. I think they're going to compete a
Yeah.
lot more than last year. But for me, it's just like I when you look at this division, I think the top four for sure are a whole lot better, and then I think there's still like a couple teams in there that are just a step ahead, and then there's Chicago there. For me, it's also just thinking that some of these players are going to be gone at trade deadline time.
Okay.
Also, their goaltending, man, like
Yeah, that's
you
the
don't know
wild
what you're
card,
going to
right?
get
Like if
here.
it's terrible, I could see them finishing last.
I think we spent enough time though, sort of breaking down this whole division. Let's move on to the Pacific Division, and the first team we have up, it's the Vancouver Canucks. Mark, what do you think about this team?
Honestly, like they had a pretty decent amount of turnover this year, but I'd say like if you break it all down roster wise, like I'd say they're kind of in a similar situation. I'd say maybe they like regressed a little bit. I don't think it's going to be enough where it's like a huge concern. They obviously won this division last year. I don't think they're going to win it again, but I think they're definitely going to be finishing in the top three. I've got them finishing in third right now. Currently, I do think it's going to be tight. I think they're still going to be a really solid team. 109 points. I think it's probably just going to be like 6 to 7 points less. So once you break this down, like they bring in Jake DeBrusk. I think it's a pretty solid ad. I think he's gonna look good with Pedersen, to be quite honest. Like he's kind of like that grindy forward, like he can
Yeah,
go and get Pedersen the puck. Meanwhile, it's like JT Miller kind of does that himself. Like I don't think he really needs a guy like DeBrusk to do that. You know what I mean? They lose Elias Lindholm. He wasn't really that great when he was there, to be honest. I know he had that OT goal in the first round, but I don't know. I don't really think that trade was really worth it for the Canucks. On defense, though, like Zadorov gone, kind of a big loss, I think. They bring in a couple other like big guys. This is like
yeah,
a really big decor this year outside of the top pairing. Tyler Myers is back, like he's 6'8". They bring in Vinny Desharnais from Edmonton, he's 6'6". Derek Forbort's like 6'4". Um, I don't really love their defense, to be quite honest. I think it's built better for the playoffs. I don't really know how great it's going to be in the regular season, but when you've got Quinn Hughes and Hronik, it's like I don't think it's that much of a concern. You know what I mean?
yeah. For for
What
me,
do you think about this team? Like Demko out is a huge question mark too, though, dude. Right? That's kind of why I got them in third.
Demko, I have him in second to be honest. We both are going to be unanimous on who's first in this division, but I have them second in this division. For me, they're bringing back their core, right? Which is the most important thing. They're bringing back their core. Demko, it's going to be a question mark. To me, it's just when you get lower in their lineup, they're not as frightening as they were last year, right? Like even Lindholm, he didn't have the production last year that you were sort of hoping for if you were the Vancouver Canucks, but like he's still a good player. He's still a good defensive player, right? Like Zadorov, he was pretty good for them at times last year. It's like you're sort of missing those pieces in the lineup here to start off this season. But the thing with that though is like those are pieces that you can go out and add to your team throughout the season, right? It's like the core group of players that you really need heading into the season. They have right now. They have. It's just for them to really become a true championship contender, they're going to need to go and add some of those pieces to play maybe like on your second line with Pedersen. Like right now Daniel Sprong, he's penciled in on their second line playing with Pedersen and DeBrusk, right? Like I like Daniel Sprong, but I think he's better as like a third line scoring type of threat, right? It's like if you add maybe a second line player, I think that helps out. If you add maybe a 4-3 defenseman, I think that'll help out a fair bit. For me though, the biggest thing, man, it's their goaltending. Like what is Demko going to be like this year, right? Like he's he's a guy that you would have in the conversation with like the Swaymans, the Soroses is like he's that next generation of
He'd be
great
the next guy
goaltenders.
realistically up for a big payday beside, well, minus Shesterkin.
Like with that knee injury now, it's like first of all, how many games is he even going to be able to play this season, right? And if he is playing a good amount of
Yeah.
games, how is that knee injury and that knee pain sort of going to affect how well he's moving around in the net, how well he's performing? They got Seelovs back there, which may help out. Like he looked really good in the playoffs last year, but it's a really small sample size, right? With Seelovs, like is he going to
Yeah.
be able to be that if Demko can't have the season and performance that you sort of need from him? For me, that's the scariest thing with him. I like that Atu Rowdy kid. I want to see what he can do. Can he sort of come into the lineup and provide some production? Because if he can do that, then that's sort of one less piece you have to go out and get during the season that going into the season we thought they might need to get. I'm I'm not super high on this team, man, but I think if they make the right moves during the season, they have a shot on going on a little bit of a run here. Let's move on though to the number one team here in this division. It's not my Calgary Flames. They fucking suck. It's the Edmonton Oilers. They had some interesting moves. Ryan McLeod, he goes out. Warren Fogle, Cody Ceci, Philip Broberg, and Dylan Holloway. Of course, those two players, as we talked about earlier, are on the way out. But they bring in Jeff Skinner. They bring in Victor Arvidsson. Vasily Podkolzin, he comes in from Vancouver. And then Matthew Savoy, too. He comes in. He hasn't made the team, but could be an interesting piece that maybe comes up at some point. Maybe he's like the Logan Stankoven trajectory this season, where he sort of comes up at the end of the season. How are you feeling about this team, though?
Man, I still think they look really legit.
Oh yeah,
I think if there's one thing they can improve on, it's kind of the same thing as last year, their right side of defense. I do think not offer sheeting and taking the picks is kind of the move.
yeah,
To be quite honest with you, at those price tags, it's just like before Leon signed his extension, you would have to accept these offer sheets and pay a guy with 71 NHL games, who, to be fair, hasn't even really been that good in those 71 games, minus the playoffs where I thought he looked pretty solid. You're gonna pay him $4.5 million and expect to like walk to Draisaitl and be like, "Don't take 15 million." You know what I mean? He's gonna be like, "Well, you just gave this freaking guy $5 million, dude." Like, I think
yeah.
it's like setting a standard, man. And who knows if that had anything to do with Draisaitl signing for the number that he did, right? That's probably the biggest news of their offseason, getting him locked up for 14 million bucks for 8 years. People think it's high. Man, honestly, the way I see it, he's one of the best players in the NHL. We want salaries to go up when the salary cap goes up. McDavid's going to make more money than him. Dude, he's been playing on a fucking bargain for 8 years. It's like, if you think it's $1 million overpaid, it's like, dude, he's been underpaid like $5 million a year, like for like the entire duration of his contract. So it's like, even if he wasn't like, I'll take a discount, it's like, I don't even know if I blame him that much. He's been playing on at $8.5 million when he's a $12 million player. Like, so I don't know. I like that contract, dude. The most important thing is that he's coming back. I think if you lost him, that's a huge loss, right? Especially before like McDavid's even like making a decision if he's staying or not. But in accordance to like moves for this year, they look even better up front, dude.
Yeah,
Like
I'm with
even
you on that,
without
man.
Evander Kane, like probably being out till like the deadline or before, I love Jeff Skinner coming in. I think he's a potential. Put it this way, I could see him scoring 40, and I would be shocked if he didn't score 30.
See, I was gonna ask you that. I was gonna say, how many goals does Jeff Skinner get this year? Because
I
I was
think
saying
that it's like he's been a multiple 40 goal scorer on like
the
in
Buffalo
situations
Sabres.
where he hasn't been playing with like nearly as good of players, and he scored 30 a couple times. He's kind of labeled as this guy because of the money he makes, but he is still a very solid player,
Yeah.
dude. Like he's a top six forward, no doubt. It's just that he made $9 million, right? I like Victor Arvidsson coming in. He kind of brings a little bit of sandpaper to their team. Good contract at $4 million. Only issue with him is he's had trouble staying healthy. Does he stay healthy? Does he not? I think the next move for this team is potentially bringing in a right-handed shooting defenseman in the top four. Getting rid of Cody Ceci and that money, I think, is the better call. Better call. Keep an eye for this Ty Emerson kid, though, dude. Honestly, like a pretty undercover, sneaky good defensive defenseman. More of like a third pairing guy, but I don't know. Does he get opportunity on the second pair? Does he kind of thrive in that role? They kind of need that type of player that if he can be a really solid defensive guy. Man, there's been so many guys that you probably don't think you're going to have like some sort of NHL career. They're more of a defensive defenseman, and it's just like they hit their mid to late 20s and they kind of figure it out and they come in and they're actually like make a career for themselves. And they're kind of that number 4, 5, 6 defenseman. You know what I mean? So it's like,
Yeah.
dude, does this kid become that? I don't know. Like he could be an answer for the Oilers, like what they might need. You know what I mean? So we'll see how it does. I don't see a situation where this team doesn't win the division. Like considering how bad they started last year and they almost won it last year, it's like, dude, I would like mortgage my house right now, even though I don't even have one, that this team is winning this division.
I'm with you on this, man. I think this team is winning the division easily. For me, it's their right hand side. Yeah, I think it could get a little bit better. The other thing too, I'm sort of interested to look at going into this season is the goalies. Right now, they got Stuart Skinner. He's a good goalie. There's no question mark with him. But Calvin Pickard, do they maybe try to go out and get another goalie to sort of take the load off Stuart Skinner? I'd be interested to sort of see if they do that and what they sort of want to do there with a backup position in net, because I like Stuart Skinner, but I don't know if I want Stuart Skinner playing like 60 games again this year, right? Like I want to give him a
Yeah, yeah.
little bit of a break, especially if you're trying to go on a deep playoff run, which we all know this team's going to do. I'm
But
with
it's
you on
like if
Jeff.
you're at the top of the division and you have like a decent like cushion, it's like you can probably like I would expect to see Pickard a bit more, you know?
Yeah,
Like you
I
can
just
risk playing him more, you know?
I wonder though, do they go on maybe try to find another backup and see what options are maybe available there? I'm with you on Jeff Skinner though, man. I wouldn't be surprised if this guy scored 40 this year. I for sure think 30 is well within reach. Like we talk about
I'd be
myself and
shocked if he didn't get 30.
yeah, like we talk about myself and how I would score 20 goals playing on this team with these players, right? Like Jeff Skinner, he's 100 times a hockey player I am, right? If I'm scoring 20 goals on this team, man, no doubt Jeff Skinner's scoring at least 30, if not 40. For me, the other thing though is like put Colson, what's he gonna do? Right now he's sort of penciled in there on the fourth line. I don't know if he's like the kind of player that you want on your fourth line. Like I don't think he provides like the grit maybe that they want. It'd be interesting to sort of see what they do with him if he gets bumped up the lineup, what they sort of do with him. The other thing too is like what's Evander Kane going to be when he comes back? Because if he
Yeah.
comes back and is performing how he was performing at points with this team, like that's almost like you're getting a guy at the trade deadline, right? So
Yeah.
it's
It's gonna
like
be healthy at that point too, right?
like if he comes back and he's doing that, then it's like okay, they can really invest here in a defenseman, which I think is really the I don't want to say weak point of this team, but like if you had to pick somewhere where it's like you do want to see them improve, it definitely is on that right hand side, as you sort of mentioned.
Okay,
Let's
one
move
thing
on to
about this team that I don't think a
go
lot of
ahead.
people like really realize. Okay, does it concern you at all that minus put Colson making the team, McDavid is their youngest forward?
Ah,
Like in accordance to like speed wise, I know like they've got like they're not slow. And it's like obviously they play at a different pace with McDavid and you know what I mean? But does that age thing kind of get to you at like do you like does it make you change your mind at all, especially like thinking that this team just went on a really long playoff run as well? Like
not
and they
not
also were playing catch up like all season last year. Like I don't know. I
not
don't think it really is going to affect them. I'm just curious what you think.
it doesn't scare me much, man, because like we were like when we were talking about Nashville earlier, right? Like Nashville, they're an older team too, and when you look at their core group of players is older than Edmonton's core group of players. Yeah, McDavid's like the youngest forward outside of Podkolzin, but it's not like you're talking about like it's McDavid and then you have like Draisaitl who's 33 and Nuge is like 32 and Hyman's like 34,
Yeah,
right?
yeah.
Like it's like McDavid's the youngest player there, but they're all like within like a year or two of him. Like they're all sort of late 20s, early 30s, right? It's not like they're all like mid to late 30s. Like it's not like the Pittsburgh Penguins like going into last season that we're talking about, But I
Yeah.
think they could add a bit of youth. Who knows? Like Matthew Savoy, right? Like, does he get called up at some point and get a chance to sort of show what he can do? Because if he does, like that could be a younger,
With
like,
injuries, dude, I think he's probably one of the first guys that's knocking on the door to get called up, right?
and it's like if he comes up, man, like it'd be sort of interesting to see what he can do, especially considering the talent that he playing with, right? Because like if you're coming up as a 21 year old and you're maybe getting power play 2 time, or you're getting some looks with Leon Draisaitl on that second line, like he could potentially have a pretty big impact, right? Like it'd be interesting to
100%.
see, but
Before
I
we
like
move on,
this.
I got a couple more things about this team, okay?
Yeah, for sure.
One thing, obviously, they bring in a new GM and Stan Bowman. A lot of people have opinions about that, and I think it's pretty fair to have different opinions about that. Before he was hired, though, like Jeff Jackson or whatever the heck his name is, who is the interim GM,
Yeah.
I think he did up some pretty tidy work, dude. Like with
Oh
that
yeah.
Matt Savoy trade, and even like we talk about the Oilers in past years, their depth is a problem, right? After the top guys, they can't score. Well, Connor Brown coming back, 1 year, 1 mil. He was really good in the playoffs, dude. I like that. Matthias Janmark, he was pretty solid too, man. Like 1.45 by 3. And then Corey Perry, 1.1 by 1. Like, I think that's some pretty tidy business for some guys that are going to be playing the bottom 6. That's not even $4 million. Like, that's some really good business, I think. Okay, and I've got 2 questions for you about this team going
Yeah.
forward. It's more for like next year, but I'm curious to know what you think. One, is this Darnell Nurse's last year as an Oiler because of the Draisaitl extension kicking in, McDavid potentially being re-signed, and then which also leads into my second question: what do you think that Evan Bouchard is going to get for a contract? Because he's also up next year. He's an RFA, but we're talking about Draisaitl going from 8.5 to 14, and Bouchard going from 3.9 to whatever he gets. When we've got Darnell Nurse making 9.25, and he probably should be making like half of that.
Yeah, like he's not a 9 1/4
Like, do
defenseman at
you
all.
think
Like
this is potentially the last year of him there?
I could see it, but like it's like, man, like it's a bad contract unload, dude. Here's my answer for you. If based off what Leon Draisaitl's making, McDavid, I'm guessing he's going to be signing for probably 15,
I
right?
personally think even 16.
So, okay. So if McDavid signs for even let's not even say 16. Let's throw that completely out the window. If McDavid signs for 15, I think Bouchard's signing for at least 8.5. At least.
I
Eh,
think I think that's even undervaluing it, dude.
I think
Like Sider just got 8.5, dude.
the only thing that was Sider's a bit younger, right? So you're getting him for more of the prime, where Bouchard you're paying him maybe when he's starting to drop off. But okay, let's say Bouchard's penciled in at 8.5, and McDavid's penciled in at 15. I don't think that's even possible, dude. If Darnell Nurse is on the team making that much money,
That's what I mean, dude. So it's like
like,
I think he's either going to be traded with a sweetener or bought out.
see, I think you try to trade him with a sweetener, man. Like if if you're Stan Bowman right now, question coming back at you. If you're Stan Bowman right now, like what would you give up in a trade along with Darnell Nurse just to get that contract off the books?
Well, I feel like that question should be more phrased if I'm another GM, like what I would want.
That's
Because
fair.
I think there's a different, like, he'd ideally want to give up like nothing and like, or even get an asset back for him, right? But like, I don't think that's possible. Like, if I'm another GM and I have the cap space to utilize it, like, I think he's got 5 years left on the deal after this year, or is it 4?
After this year, it is It's 5 years. It's till 2029, 2030 is the last season.
Honestly, I think I'm asking for a first. I'm probably asking for a second, and I'm probably asking for your best prospect.
So Savoy, a first and a second.
Yeah. I you got to understand that this is 5 years left at almost $10 million.
Oh yeah,
Like
it's a
this
lot of
isn't a
money.
normal take this bad contract for a year or two. Like, I don't know. Like it just I think you'd like if I'm the Habs and I'm okay with taking this contract on for 5 years, it's like without a first, a second in Savoy, I wouldn't even like talk to you about it.
Okay.
I would say not even worth my time. You know what I mean? I don't have to take this contract on. You know what I mean? It's like you need to do it because you need cap space. Like screw it. Like if I'm taking this contract, I want like assets in return to take this contract. You know what I mean? And that could be just me. But like if you're the Flames, you're in the same situation, dude. We're okay, they're probably not making the trade with the Flames, but like if you're okay with being bad for like 5 years and taking this guy, like would you not feel like you would want like at least like a first in Savoy to start?
See, I'd either want a first and like an A tier prospect, or I'd want two firsts.
Yeah. That's what I mean though. Like
And if
an A
to
tier
be
prospect's kind of equivalent to a first rounder, I'd say,
to
right?
be
So,
honest, if I was Edmonton, I'd give up two firsts. See, for me, if I was Edmonton, I just wouldn't want to do the whole prospect thing as much, depending on who the prospect was, because it's like if you're giving up Savoy in a trade, like that's a that's somebody who's close to making the team. Where it's like after
true,
that,
but I just
they have
think that
no
like
young guys
with the
really.
limited teams that like would be able to take the contract on with the cap space probably aren't going to be a great team, and that to them adding Savoy is more valuable than getting a first because they know what he has projected, you know what I mean? Like how he's done in junior the past couple years, how he's still looking really good. So I just think more if it's like a team that's actually going to be taking the contract on, they're going to be looking at a guy that's almost ready to step in the NHL or might even be ready if on that certain team to play right away. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Sort of. But before we move on from this, though, the one that I honestly like, a team that I'd be interested in, like maybe does Edmonton look at is the Columbus Blue Jackets, right? Like we were talking about
That
last
was a team
episode.
I was thinking about too.
We were talking about the last episode how they're below the cap floor right now, and they sort of have the like the NHL is okay with that and is giving them their time to get above that cap floor, but it's like they got more than enough cap space to bring in Darnell Nurse. I don't really think they're that close to winning or competing where bringing in that this contract's really going to hurt them in the long run. So it's like if Edmonton's willing to give up whatever Columbus's price is, like if I'm Edmonton and I'm Stan Bowman right now, honestly, I'd be going to the Blue Jackets at some point this season and offering whatever it takes to get the deal done. Like if I'm Stan Bowman, man, I'd give up two first without a doubt.
The problem is I think he might like I think he's got a modified no trade, so that might
Yeah.
complicate things. I think we spent a ton of time on this Oilers team. I could probably talk about them even more, to be honest, because they're a really interesting team. But I think we should give some other love and kind of our opinions to some other teams in the league. What do you think about LA?
LA,
Um,
man,
I was kind of praising this team to start the year last year, but to be fair, they did come out and win 11 straight road games, which was really solid. They kind of fell off, I think, kind of after I praised them, to be honest. I might be the problem here, but um, I don't know. I don't really know how I feel about this team, dude. I think that they kind of got a little bit worse. I think that not having Drew Doughty till probably the new year is going to be a huge loss.
yeah,
We're really going to see a lot of Brant Clark and Jordan Spence, I think. Um, but like it's their goaltending debatably even got worse bringing in Kemper. They get out of that Dubois contract, which I mean is pretty solid. And even to get Kemper like shorter term, but it's like it doesn't really address your goaltending problems. You're bringing in a guy who's coming off the worst year of his career, and he's like 34. Um, They bring in some toughness and Tanner Jeannot. Kind of actually like that ad for them. Warren Fogel's a decent player. They're obviously familiar with him playing Edmonton so much. I'll be honest with you. I think that Joel Edmondson signing was probably the worst signing of the offseason. I don't know how this guy makes $3.8 million, dude. Like, he's a bottom pairing physical defenseman who skates like decent. It's like, I don't understand why they thought that was necessary. Just not a good use of cap space in my mind. But honestly, they lost a couple decent players. Victor Arvidsson, we were talking about him, how much we think he's going to make an impact with Edmonton. I think Matt Roy is one of the undercover best defensive defenseman in the NHL. I talked about this when we talked about Washington last episode. I think it's a huge loss, but I also think that with Brant Clark and Jordan Spence there with Doughty, it's like the time's kind of just up for him in LA, you know? But I mean, it's going to be a huge loss. They're going to lose a bit defensively. It was kind of like when last year New Jersey kind of took a step back defensively without who am I blanking on here?
Hamilton.
I was thinking it's John Marino, but no, I'm totally off with this, to be honest with you. There's one team that took a big step back defensively when they lost someone.
Are you thinking?
Dude, I am totally. I think it was more just. I think it was like when they lost Ryan Graves, and there was someone else they lost. It wasn't John Marino, but like New Jersey, I mean, like they took a step back last year, even a little bit with like bringing in the young guys and Luke Hughes and Simon Nemec. Like they're good players, but I mean, it's like they don't develop that like full all around game right away. So it's like I kind of compare that to maybe New Jersey a little bit, at least on like the defensive side. I think they're kind of going to be right there where they're fighting for a playoff spot. I think they're going to get in. I think they're going to be a wild card team, but I don't think it's going to be like I don't think they're going to be much of a threat.
See,
like I think it's going to be more where I don't. Sorry to interrupt. I don't think it's going to be like. I think they're going to be similar to Washington last year, but not in the sense where they have like a minus 35 goal differential. I just think it's going to be like when they get into the playoffs, that number one team is just going to like potentially just sweep them.
Yeah. See,
you know
honestly, what I mean? I haven't finished.
Which might be Edmonton again.
I haven't finishing third in this division, man. Like I think this division is. Yeah, like
it's not a good division.
For me, you got Kopitar. Kopitar's still Kopitar, right? Like Adrian Kempe, he's a great player. I like Kevin Fiala. Quentin Byfield, I wonder what kind of step he takes this year, right? Like,
oh God, dude. Okay, like I was talking about Wyatt Johnson making Team Canada. I think fucking Byfield might make Team Canada.
I would not surprise me at all. He's a big body man. Like I love his game.
Solid contract extension for him, though, eh? Like 5.25 for 5 years or 6 years, whatever. Yeah, it's going to suck. He's going to be 28, 29 and sign a big ticket. But I mean, for the short term, I think it's a solid freaking contract, man.
The thing that's interesting with this team is like they're bringing in even more youth this year, right? Like they've been bringing in some youth slowly over time and sort of mixing that youth with the like Kopitars and the Doughties and some of those players. But it's like this year, I think this is the youngest this team's been probably over the last few seasons because it's you're bringing in Turcotte this year, right? Like what kind of impact is Turcotte going to have? I'm pretty sure he was a top 10 pick. Like there was a lot of expectations for him when he was drafted. So it's like what is he going to do this year? Akil Thomas, he's also projected to be here on the roster. It's what impact is he going to be able to have? Brant Clark, as we mentioned earlier, like if these three players can come in and sort of have some good rookie seasons and be making impacts, and like I do think this team finishes third. Like
I think it just scares me how long Doughty's out because I feel like he still doesn't get the credits for how good he is, even at his age. Just a really solid, like all around defenseman. I think that just scares me a bit, but I am really high on Brant Clark, and I think he's got a really high ceiling. But I mean, it doesn't mean that he's going to hit it this year or even make progress. You know what I mean? Who knows? So I don't know. I think they're definitely waiting for Doughty to get back already. The goaltending definitely like a question mark, but it's not like Kemper hasn't had points in his career where he's been really good, right? I've been a Kemper supporter like since he was back in Arizona, but he's just coming off a terrible year last year, to be quite honest, like the worst of his career. So they're definitely hoping that turns around. I've got them finishing in the second wild card spot. I don't think they're going to be much of a threat this year, but yeah, they're going really young, bringing in Turcotte, Akil Thomas. They put Samuel Fagemo on waivers. I don't know if you're that familiar with him. He's averaged like 45 goals over like a year over the past 2 years in the AHL. He was claimed by Nashville last year, then like was claimed back by LA. He's been kind of that fringe guy. I'm a little bit surprised he didn't get a shot this year, scoring 42 last year, but he could be a guy that comes up and makes an impact. One guy I'm kind of curious to see how he does this year too. Been very underwhelming is Arthur Kaliev.
Yeah.
Did not put up many points last year. I thought he honestly may have got traded in the offseason. There was a couple of guys where I thought they were in a very similar situation. Him, Tomasino, and Nick Robertson. They were all like guys where they're pretty decent, high picks, had a chance in the NHL, haven't stayed really in the NHL. Kaliev has, but he's been more like he's getting scratched. He's on the third line, he's on the second line, and I remember in junior, dude, he had a cannon of a shot. And I'm like, dude, this guy's
he was a good junior
30.
player.
Like he was like a 32nd overall pick, and I'm like, LA got a snag. Like, but he has not shown it at all. So he's one guy that I've got my eye on this year for sure.
Let's move on to the Vegas Golden Knights. They had a decent bit of changeover this offseason. They lose Jonathan Marchessault, so they lose Chandler Stevenson. Logan Thompson, he goes on his way out. Alec Martinez, Anthony Mantha, and Paul Cotter all out the door. They bring in Victor Olofsson, Alex Holtz, Ilya Samsonov in the net. Toronto fans, they know what Vegas is getting. They also bring in Zach Aston Reese, though. Honestly, dude, looking at this team this year, I am not high up on them.
So Zach Aston Reese actually today got claimed off waivers by Columbus, so he's with the Blue Jackets now. But yeah, they I think roster wise they're definitely a little bit worse. I just think how bad this division is, to be quite honest with you, that they're easily going to finish in the top three. They obviously lost some pretty talented players, especially in their top six. Chandler Stevenson, Marchessault, that really sucks as well, right? That was kind of weird, that whole contract negotiation thing. Did you listen to that podcast with Marchessault on? He was at the Cam and Strick pod.
No, I never got a chance to listen.
Dude. Oh, man, you should go and listen to it. It was nuts. It was like he wanted 4 years, and Vegas was like, they weren't even offering 3 at first. And then they finally offered 3, and he was like, dude, like, I want 4. And then, dude, he basically took over the negotiation like 36 hours before July 1st. And he called like Kelly McCrimmon and was like, are you serious? And he was like, yeah, like, he's like, I don't know if we can go to like 4 years. And he was like, okay, like, call me in the morning. So then McCrimmon called him, and he's like, yeah, like, we just can't. And then he was like, are you fucking serious? Like, you're letting me go? And like, he was like, basically like, we might have to. Dude, and then he got 5 from Nashville. Like, I don't think money was the issue ever. I think it was the term for him. I guess he's older. He wants to settle down. I think coming off that 40-goal season, it's much deserved as well. I don't know if you heard as well, but they were the first team to try to offer to do that deferred like contract thing. You know how Jarvis got that contract where it's like he has less of a cap hit, but like, did you know about that Jarvis contract?
No.
So basically the way it works is that you got to search it up and see a bit more info. So basically he's making $7.9 million for 8 years, but he's deferring money until the end of the contract. So his cap hit is like 7.45, and he's making $15 million like the day he becomes a UFA. Like, he gets paid $15 million on the last day of his contract. So it's like, it's a thing in the CBA.
So it's almost just like so
it's like backloading the contract a bit. Basically, it saves Carolina $500,000 on the cap throughout the duration of his contract for Jarvis.
The cap hits the same every year, though, no?
It's still like, so Jarvis, he's making 7.9 for 8 years. Yeah. Money-wise, the cap hit is 7.45. But the AAV is 7.9. So like $450,000 each year is like not on the cap. and he gets paid it at the
Okay.
end. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
So Vegas tried doing that with Marchessault during the season when they were offering him contracts. They were like, "Oh, we'll do deferred," and he's like, "No, I don't want that." Like I guess for him, it's like, dude, he's like he didn't really excel as a player till like
Really got
basically a
there.
little bit before he got to Vegas, right? Like he hasn't been this like star since he was 21. Like he hasn't had very many big contracts, you know?
Yeah.
So for him, he was just probably like, I just want all the money like I can, like as if I can get bonuses, like I don't want to defer my money, right? So that kind of makes sense. That situation sucked. Them losing Chandler Stevenson, kind of expected after bringing in Hurdle, and they already had
Yeah.
William Carlson anyway. Really good player though. Like they're gonna miss him. Logan Thompson asked for a trade. I think he just wants a more of an opportunity to like potentially even be a starter, and he just thought he wasn't gonna get that in Vegas. They bring in Ilya Samsonov. I mean, he's more equipped to being a backup goalie. I think we'll see how he does. Roster wise, yeah, they're definitely not as good for sure. I just think this division's not that good, and I think that they still got a very good decor with losing Alec Martinez. Noah Hannafin's staying in Vegas. I think they're coming in second in this division.
Think that okay. See, like I look at this team. I like their decor a lot still. Like Petrangelo, Theodore. You bring in Hannafin. Like their 1, 2, 3 is a very good 1, 2, 3. For me, their forward group though, man. Like they have the
The
big
left
dogs.
side is weak.
They have the big dogs. Like you have Eichel, Mark Stone. Like who knows what it's going to be like for Mark Stone this year if with his injury history, right? Like Thomas Hurdle. I like him, but I like man, I don't like this forward group that much, dude. Like
Okay.
I'm really wishy-washy on this team because I really like their defensive group, but then when I look at their forward group outside of Eichel, I don't really love it that much. And then their goaltending, like if Hill goes down at some point and your season lies in the hands of Ilya Samsonov, I don't have much hope there to be honest. Like this might be a hot take, man, but I don't think this team makes the playoffs this year.
Really?
I think they finished fifth in
See,
the
I
division
would
and
feel a
just
lot
miss
different
out.
about them if they were in the Central.
If they were in the Central, do you have them in the playoffs?
Um, Probably a wild card team over Utah.
Okay. Okay. Yeah, for me, I don't know. It's just the Ford group I don't like at all, dude.
But I just think they're gonna go out and make some moves, man. That's just my opinion, like they always do.
I could for
Okay,
sure see
last
them
thing
doing
on
that.
them. What do you think of the whole Leonard thing? Like the whole contract thing?
Like in what sense? Like do I agree
So
with it? Do I not like
like yeah, so like do you agree with them like not having to put him on LTIR?
so
Do you know what's going on with it? Like do you get what I mean?
I sort of
So
understand what's going
basically,
on. I don't
so
get
he
the
didn't
whole
report to
legal
camp,
stuff though.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So he told them he wasn't reporting, and so they knew he wasn't coming, but he still has to go. Like it doesn't matter. Like
Yeah.
he's obligated to go, but basically, so they got the league involved. But basically, I don't think Vegas wanted to fuck him and terminate his deal and like not pay him because he's owed like $4 million and like he's injured, but he's also in that debt. So I don't think they wanted to screw him over in that sense. But so basically, the agreement is that Vegas pays Leonard his money, but his contract's like in accordance to like being on the cap is like terminated.
Yeah.
So what that means though is that Vegas isn't using LTIR to start the season. And when you use LTIR, like if you start, like you can't accumulate cap space during the year. You know how teams accumulate cap space?
Yeah.
So if you start the season not on LTIR, you're accumulating cap space. So now that they don't have to put them on LTIR, Vegas can accumulate cap space during the season.
See, basically what like I was listening to 32 Thoughts the other day, and basically what they were saying was that like the way the NHL wanted to do this because of like sort of the whole Robin Leonard and everything he's sort of been through recently, and Vegas like right like Vegas didn't want to fuck him and terminate his contract and not pay him his money, right? So it's like
No, I get it. It's like
Yeah,
it's
like
more like
I get.
Leonard's kind of the winner in all this, to
Oh
be
yeah,
honest with you.
which is
But
good, man.
like
It's like
I like and it's like I get it. Like Vegas, like they made it like a deal and a trade-off, and like I probably would try to do the same. But to be honest with you, if I'm another team, like I'm kind of pissed.
yeah. If I'm another team, I'm probably not that
Because,
happy.
dude, I saw now since they're not using it, like they're going to be accumulating like close to $6 million of cap space.
Yeah,
So like that's like another solid player. Like, you know what I mean?
Jonathan Marchessault, so maybe.
I know.
But yeah, like I don't know, man. I have this team just missing out. That's gonna be my hot take of the episode. Um,
Okay.
let's move on though. Let's get to the big dogs, Calgary Flames. Man, this team's gonna be so much fun to watch this season. Can't wait. Jonathan, or pardon me, not Jonathan. Jacob Markstrom, he's on his way out. Andrew Mangiapane, Oliver Shillington also departs the team. They bring in Anthony Mantha. I like that, man. They also bring in Jake Bean, Kevin Ball, and Ryan Lomberg. Man, this team's
Yeah,
gonna be
I
having a
know
tough
you just
fight
did the
there.
breakdown here, but you're the Flames fan. What do you think about this squad? You obviously you don't have high expectations. You kind of know what you're in for this year. I'd say where do you expect them to finish at the end? And like what do you want to what is your main goal you want to see from this team this year?
So the main goal I want to see from this team this year is for our young players to grow, right? Like you're bringing in Dustin Wolf. He's getting his first real look in the NHL. What can he do? He's going to be in a tandem with Dan Vladar. Dan Vladar, like he's a good goaltender, but Dustin Wolf has really been given an opportunity here to take the starting position. And will he be able to do that? He's been the best goalie in the WHL and in the AHL. So what can you do here in the NHL? He has a high ceiling, and you sort of want to see what he can do, right? Like Connor Zary, he had a pretty good rookie year last year. Can he follow it up and take up another step? Samuel Honzik, another guy, he's had an amazing camp. Looks like he's going to get his shot here in the NHL to start out this season and be able to show what he can do there. Like, can some of these young players make steps? Because the Calgary Flames right now, like they're going into a rebuild, and we're sort of starting to bring up some of this youth talent and sort of see what they can do. Like there's still some guys in the AHL that could get a look at some point, right? Like Jacob Pelche, he got put down on waivers. Matthew Coronado, he's still down there. Zane Perek, of course, like he's not with the NHL, not in the AHL. He's in the OHL, but it's like what can he kind of do? The other thing too, I sort of want to see
Sorry
from.
to interrupt. Did Coronado not make the team?
I don't believe he did.
Oh, I thought he did make the team.
Maybe maybe I'm mistaken, but I don't believe I don't think he made the team. And unless the rosters that I'm looking at right now aren't showing scratches, because right now I'm looking at their roster, but I am not seeing any scratches, so they might just have him as like a healthy scratch right now. But
Okay.
Matthew Coronado, like wherever he is throughout the season, right? Like you want to see him take some steps. The other thing too, I want to have this team do is be having a high end draft pick this year and continue to add to that prospect pool. Like we already have New Jersey's first for this year. We have Florida's. We don't know what's going to happen with our pick depending on where we finish, right? Like don't want to get into that. Me and you were reading that the other day, Mark. Like that's a you have to solve the Da Vinci Code to understand how the Flames protection
Oh, dude, at
on
this
the
point,
pick.
I'm just waiting until the season ends and being like, okay,
It's like, oh,
what pick
cool,
do
we
we have?
have it. Oh shit, we don't have it. Wait, what? Okay, why? But you know what I mean? Like, it's just you want to see these younger players develop and take steps while also committing to the rebuild. And then it's like, what players get moved, man? Like you you talk about Rasmus Anderson, man. Like he has 2 years left on his contract, right? He's making less than 6 mil a year, I believe. Maybe it's like 6.5.
4.5, dude, I
He's
think.
making 4.5. Dude, if the Flame let, let me ask this. If the Flames retain 50% of Rasmus Anderson's contract and traded him at trade deadline, like what kind of trade package would he get back, man? I
I
think
think
you'd
you're
get
minimum getting what you got for Lindholm.
see, I think we get I think
Probably
we get
more. I think as a
I think we get
right-handed
like
defenseman.
double,
Okay,
dude.
you're talking about trading him. Okay, I have a question for you. I've got how many guys here? Let me just count. One, two, three. 4, 5. Okay, I think I've got 6 guys here, okay?
Yeah.
I want to know out of these 6 guys, how many of them do you think are going to be Flames at the end of the season? I don't want to say
Okay.
the deadline because some of them have term and they might not get moved midseason. It might be in the off season. Okay, say the start of the 25-26 season, okay?
Yeah.
How many of these guys do you think are going to be Flames?
Let's do one. Let's do one player at a time. Yeah.
First one. I was going to say Rasmus Anderson. You've kind of answered my question already.
See, Anderson, it's a
Isn't he
hard one,
going into the
man.
last year of his contract though as a rental? Or
So
has he got 2 left?
he has two left going into this year. So it's like,
That might even be more valuable of a package, dude. If
if
you're
you
getting
trade him
him
at
at
this
two
trade
million
deadline,
bucks.
you could get a lot for him, man. Like I love him as a player, dude. But like I'm strictly looking at this as like asset management. It, if you come to me and you're willing to give up enough for Rasmus Anderson, as I think he's probably the best right-hand shot defenseman on the market, especially considering how much money he's making. Like, I think they could get an absolute haul for him, dude. Like, if you can do that, yes, I love this player, but it gets hard to turn that down. So I'm gonna say no, he's not on the team start of 2025.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Honestly, I see him being gone at some point this year, to be quite honest. Next guy, Mackenzie Weegar.
Mackenzie Weegar, no, he's with the Flames.
You think he's with okay?
He's got
Um,
he's got like 6 years left. I I don't know how many
do you
teams are.
think he's just the guy you keep because you like I love him and I think he's the best defenseman on your team, to be honest. But like you also like you can't give up Anderson and Weegar. You're gonna be way too thin back there. There's no veteran presence. Like your young guys aren't gonna learn and develop. Like, dude, I'm going through it right now with Montreal. Like I love having David Savard on the Habs. I hope they re-sign him at like
Yeah.
a good contract to be a bottom pairing guy. Like you need that veteran leadership to help the young guys out. So Uyghur is a flame to you.
Uyghur's a flame. For me, you trade either Anderson or Uyghur. I think it's too hard to trade Uyghur with his contract. Like he's got a lot of time left on there. He's older than Anderson, right? Like the other thing too is he's a guy that went he came back in the Kachuk trade, right? So and then he signed an extension without even
Bargain,
playing a
dude.
game, right? So it's like for Flames who are already having like enough issues going out and getting free agents or losing RFAs, like you don't want to be trading a guy that's
Oh,
willing
he
and
wants
wants
to
to
be
be
there,
there.
dude.
Yeah. He's with the Flames for the long.
Okay, next guy. He's a rental. He'd be a rental. It's more or less if a team would want him. Dan Vladar.
Dan Vladar? No,
Not a
no.
flame or not traded.
Not traded. Not
Okay.
traded. You're
You
not gonna
think
get
there's
enough.
just no interest?
There's not gonna be enough interest. You're not gonna be able to get that much back for him. And it's like if you're trading him away, Dustin Wolf in his rookie season has too much of a
Would
workload.
you be open to re-signing him next year if he plays decent, or would you prefer them to go like with more of a veteran guy to be with Wolf?
I'd be open to re-signing him if he plays
Because
decent.
he's got NHL experience, but he's not that old. Like he's
Yeah.
like Vladar is a guy where I don't think he's very excelled much in the NHL. I think if anything, he's been a bit underwhelming, but I think he's young enough that he's going to get a couple more opportunities, even if it doesn't work out in Calgary. Because I think he's that young. He's very big. He's shown flashes of having the talent. I just don't think it's been very consistent. But I don't know. You never know, dude. He might get peppered with shots this year and be really good. So
Yeah.
I don't think he's going to get traded either, to be quite honest with you. I was just curious on your take on that.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. He's a flame to start off the 2025 season.
Next guy, Blake Coleman.
Blake Coleman, this is an interesting one because I believe he still has like 3 or 4 years left on his contract as like a
Yeah.
33, 32, 34-year-old. So it's like if there's interest there, yeah, I think he'll be gone. I just don't know how much interest there's gonna be, right? Because it's if your team going out and getting him, it's like does that 4 years left sort of scare you off a little bit with his age? But if
Right.
there's interest, I see him being gone.
Okay. I got 2 more guys. Andrei Kuzmenko.
Andre
He'd be a
Kuzmenko,
rental.
he's gone.
Yeah.
He's
If
gone.
he plays really well, though, you wouldn't be open to re-signing him, or do you think it's just not worth it?
It's just not worth it. Like if he plays really well, you trade him for a first. And the other thing is like,
But
do
my
you want
question is like, do you expect that to happen? Like, do you see like going into the season? Do you feel like okay, he actually looks like he's going to play? Because listen, when he came over, he was really good. Like at the back half.
Yeah.
Like, do you think that's just going to continue and you will get something good for him at the deadline?
I think it will continue because like when you look at him in Vancouver and sort of like the way out and how things ended in Vancouver, like he just wasn't getting opportunities. He
See,
wasn't
I
getting
really like this play.
opportunities. I like him too, and like on this Flames roster, man, like he's gonna be in the top six, if not on the first line. He's gonna be first power play. Like he's gonna be getting all the opportunities he can get, right? So
Yeah.
it's like what when he was given the opportunities in Vancouver, we saw what he could do. Towards the end, he
39
just
goals, dude.
yeah, like
And it was just more like Talkett came in and he didn't gel with his style and he's
yeah,
gone. And it's like, I get that, but it's like, dude, like like the drop off, like yeah, it wasn't great, but it's like it's not like he didn't do anything. Like, you know what I mean? Like he just kind
yeah.
of went to like a third line player. But I mean, I guess they just really didn't like that and would prefer a different guy to come in. But yeah, I kind of see him getting traded too. To be quite
I
honest
think
with
he's
you, I
gone.
think he could be a good ad for a team at a deadline, even if you retain half of that contract as well. Final guy here. I think this might be difficult for you. I think I'm gonna know. I think I know your answer. Nazem Kadri.
No, he's not going anywhere, man.
You don't think so?
No,
Really? I think
no,
that like I think that if you went to him, he'd be open to moving. You don't think so? Because of the
no.
situation you guys are in?
Like I just don't think there's gonna be any interest from other teams, dude.
You don't
Not that he's
really.
not that
I
he's
don't
not a
know.
good
Like I
player.
said, like I think if a team lacks a 2C, like okay, you're telling me like Carolina wouldn't be interested in Kadri? And you don't think that would
No.
be a good fit or an ad?
If you take away the contract, yeah, I think it would be. As soon as you add in the
You just think it's
contract,
all about making the money work.
making the money work, dude. I don't
But
really see
like, would you
how
be like, would you even be open to like retaining, or is it just too long?
it's too long to retain.
So you're just kind of like content with him being a flame.
I'm content with it being a flame. Like you like the thing I look at this Flames team and sort of want them to sort of build to be like is to be like Dallas and like 3 to 5 years. Be like Dallas, where you have that, where you still have the Tyler Sagans and the Jamie Benns. You're not just all this youth team, right? Like that's where I think some teams sort of have issues in rebuilds nowadays. Is like you
Buffalo,
go
dude. That's where I'm looking right now, and I see it.
Buffalo, Anaheim, like even Ottawa at the start of their rebuild. They just go full youth and sell every player that's over fucking 28 years old. Where it's like, man, like if you do that, who's in the league? Like who are the guys leading the young guys and showing them how to play hockey and showing them how to be professionals day in and
Yeah,
day out, right? Like,
see, just to like compare to Montreal for a sec, that's where I feel nervous for what to do with the defense when it's like Savard and Matheson are the guys that are like the vets. And with Matheson, it's like, dude, he's really good, but it's like we're talking about Hudson coming in, like kind of taking over that PP1. It's like Matheson would probably be better elsewhere, but it's like I almost want them to trade him, but like get some sort of vet defenseman back in the deal who's not as good and like get a pick. Like, you know what I mean? Because it's
yeah,
like I don't think having David Savard as the only guy is like enough. You know what I
yeah.
mean? So like I do completely get what you're saying.
But yeah, looking at the contract, like he's 34 right now. And he's got this season, and after this season, he's got 4 more years left on the deal. Like, I just don't really see that many teams wanting to trade for a 34-year-old with 5 years left at $7
Hey, but
million.
would your mind change if Craig Conroy came out and was like, we're willing to retain half of his contract? Like, I know you wouldn't like it, but if he said that, you don't think teams would be interested in Kadri on for 4 more years at 3.5?
I think more teams would be interested, but like, I think at that point, dude, it's more valuable to not retain for that amount of time and to
And he
have
just keep
Kadri
him and be a leader?
keep him and be a leader.
Okay,
Like,
that's completely fair.
like man, like if this guy's a 36, okay, no, that 36 is too early. But if this guy's like 36, 37 years old and the Flames are like sort of on the other side of the rebuild, and this guy's like in a Joe Pavelski type of role or a Jamie Benn type of role, like man, like I'm completely fine with that. I love
Okay.
that, to be honest.
Makes sense.
Who was there another one there or no? Or did
No,
we
that
get
was
through
the
them all?
final guy.
Yeah, like I think this season there's gonna be a lot of change for the Flames, to be honest. But
Oh, actually,
like,
there was one more guy, but I thought you were going to say yes was Mantha. But I mean, he's kind of on a 1 year deal. Like your goal probably is to trade him,
yeah,
unless he plays really well and you give him a good extension. But
I think Mantha's also on his way
yeah,
out because it's like you want to give these young guys a shot, right? Like Pelche, man, he's another guy that like at some point this season you probably want to get him in the lineup. So it's like
yeah, I
right
think
now,
Pelche, dude, you got to give him like a run of like 30 games and see how he does,
yeah,
and just like kind of decide. Well, I mean, they were willing to get rid of him anyway, putting him on waivers. But I mean, like in accordance to honestly, like for me, it'd be more or less for like even a contract for next year. Like, do you
yeah.
qualify him? Like, if he's not putting up like 10 points in 30 games, I think it's like, all right, man, I don't really see your future here. Like,
For me, this is the year where you get the youth in the lineup for the Flames and you see what they got. And if that means trading away some of these older guys on the 1 year deals and trading away Rasmus Anderson, you got to do that. Let's move on though. Oh, by the way, Flames, I don't think I ever said where I have them finishing. I have them finishing second last in the division. Sec
okay, okay,
might
I've
be
got them finishing in eighth in that division.
eighth. So
Yes.
you have them finishing dead last in the division.
Yeah, I kind of think it's gonna happen, dude.
Dude, that's harsh, man. That's harsh. I'll take it though.
I
I'll
mean,
take
San Jose got better, man.
I know you're only saying that so the Flames will have the first overall pick, and in that condition, then you guys like somehow get our
You
pick.
know, we get if you guys win the lottery, we get your first in 26. Your
Yeah,
first.
yeah, I know.
So
We're it's all right. We'll have the second overall pick, and I'm happy with that. Let's move on to the Seattle Kraken. This team, they had some sneaky, interesting moves this offseason. They lose Justin Schultz, Brian Dumoulin, Thomas Tatar, but they bring in Brandon Montour and Chandler Stevenson. For the short term, I love going out and getting those players. Long term, contract wise, towards the end, it might look a little bit ugly. I sort of like this team though heading into the season. How are you feeling about them?
yeah, I kind of like the way they've gone about it this year too. They've made a couple interesting moves bringing in Stevenson and Montour. Besides that, they didn't really do much. I'm assuming Shane Wright's going to get a pretty heavy look here at the beginning of the
He's
season
looked great in preseason, man.
to see what he can do. I think he's going to be a pretty good player for them this year. Um, they didn't really lose too much, I don't think. Like Dumoulin's not really too bad of an ad, or like Tatar, Justin Schultz either doesn't even have a contract. So um, I think this team probably got a little bit better. Um, I do not have them making the playoffs this year. I guess I'm just a little bit more of a question mark with like Decord was great last year. Like, is he going to be that good again? Um, I think this is like Grubauer's last shot with the Kraken. He's been pretty bad since he's been there, to be quite honest.
Yeah.
I think it's like potential that like he could be a buyout candidate this summer if he doesn't figure it out. I think their goaltending is just a little bit too much of a question mark for me. They definitely did get a little bit better. I do like the Stevenson ad to like take a little bit of pressure off Beniers. But I do agree in the sense that these contracts may not look so good in about 5 years or so. But I think for the short term, for getting better, it is pretty good. But I don't know. I also see a little bit in this team that like if one of their goalies gets hot, do they kind of do what they did 2 years ago? And it's like a galvanated unit of players getting them into the playoffs and winning a round against the defending champs, right? Like they got no superstars on this team, like at all. I love Jared McCann though. Like I
I think
think
he
he's
might be the most
so
underrated goal
underrated.
scorer.
Like he scored 40 like at least once. Um I'm curious to see too how they're gonna play under Bilesma instead of Dave Hackstall. I'm sure that Shane Wright probably even loves that he's going up with him too. It probably makes him feel a lot more comfortable. But man, I've always been a Dan Bilesma. I've always kind of loved him. He's won the cup, dude. Won the Jack Adams a couple years later. Like was fired, got another gig in Buffalo, and he hasn't been in the league since like 2017. It's just seems kind of odd that he hasn't got another opportunity, but I mean, he's here now, right? So I've got these guys coming in fifth place in this division. I think it's going to be pretty close. Like, I think they might be like knocking on the door even the last couple games like of the season to get in the playoffs, but I think they're just going to come a little bit short.
Honestly, dude, I have this team finishing in the second wild card spot
Okay.
in the
I
West.
can see it, man. I can see it. I can't lie.
Dude, I think them picking up Stevenson and Montour is like massive, massive for the short time. Like
Takes a
you
lot of
look at
pressure off Vince Dunn.
t yeah, having Montour takes a lot of pressure off of them. Like they have two pretty solid pairings now on defensemen. Like their third pairing, it could get a little bit better. I think they could
That Will
improve.
Borgen, though, dude, is a pretty solid defensive defenseman. Is he
I,
slot on the bottom pair there? Like, I don't mind him at all. Who's the other guy? Is it Riker Evans they have?
yeah, it is Riker
So
Evans.
he's actually like a decent prospect for them. He's like kind of like a puck moving, good skating defenseman. So I don't know. Like you say that, but I think that pair might even surprise you a bit. Like their D aren't bad whatsoever, and like their second pair is like kind of like a mean pair, like Alexiak and Adam Larson. Like
Yeah.
I kind of like that pair.
See, I'm even seeing it too that they might go Alexiak Montour, which I
Split them
even
up. That's not a bad idea either.
I
And
even like that because you split them up. And the other thing with Alexiak is Alexiak's really stay-at-home defenseman. So it's like if you pair him with Montour, man, that allows Montour to go full-blown offense. And if he can have an offensive season like he had 2 seasons ago, where he sort of broke out and came out on the scene,
73
like
points, man.
that'd be huge for him. The thing I really like about this team though is it's their center depth, man. Like you've been years as your first line center. He sort of had a sophomore slump, which wasn't the best last season. But if he can take a step here and really prove to be a star and an all-star player, like I have no doubt this team will be in the playoffs. You have Chandler Stephen as your second line center, and then you have Shane Wright on your third line. Like he's had a pretty good preseason here, and I'm excited to sort of what he can do in his first full NHL season. I like their depth, man. Like Oliver Bjorkstrand, pardon me. This guy was an all-star 1 year ago, right? Like right now he's penciled in to be playing with Shane Wright on the third line. Like the depth for this team, I like it a fair bit heading into the season. Just think with this team's depth compared to some of the other teams in the Pacific Division, I think they'll get in based off that.
Okay, I can see it, but I think I got them coming a couple points short, but definitely think they're going to be knocking on the door close to the end of the season.
Let's move on to some more California teams. The first one is the Anaheim Ducks. They really did not have that much movement
Not a lot going on.
this offseason. They bring in Robbie Fabry and Brian Dumoulin. Not too much. I think this team is it's gonna take a step up from where they were last year, but at the end of the day, I don't see them making the playoffs. I have them sixth, finishing sixth in this division. Where do you have them?
That's actually the same spot I got them finishing in as well. I do think they are going to be a bit better of a team, and you want to see progression from more of these young guys again. Like can McTavish hit another level here this upcoming season? Like, what are we going to see from Trevor Zegras coming off that season where he was injured quite a bit? Is he even going to be a Duck the whole year? Like, I
Yeah.
don't really know. These are a lot of question marks for them. One guy I'm really keeping my eye on, and I think he might be in the Calder race, is Cutter Gauthier. I think he's
Yep.
kind of he's an undercover, like pretty solid, like power forward, even like sniper type. Like wouldn't surprise me one bit if he's scoring 25 goals this year. Curious to see if he's going to play in the top six, or where exactly first power play as well. Yeah, I mean, like you kind of hope this team takes a better step. Internally they probably hope they can take a better step than coming in sixth. I think they probably believe that they know this division's not strong, that they probably even think they can even fight for the playoffs. That's what I think personally. Like I think that their GM sees it. It's probably not an expectation like internally, but I think they see a route where they can like squeeze into a wild card, to be quite honest with you. Um, I don't see it personally. I think that these guys are too young. Their depth isn't that great either. On defense too, I don't know if you heard, but like Cam Fowler would prefer a trade.
Yeah.
That's going to be kind of difficult, I think. Um, he makes 6.5. He's really solid. it's just he's got a little bit of term. He's older. Um, and it's the same thing we were talking about with the vet defenseman. It's like, are you going to trade him for like someone younger? Are you getting picks? Like, I'd almost prefer them to get another vet D back. Like, Gudis is their guy, right? Like, I think if Fowler wanted to stay, he might even been the captain. But
Yeah,
Gudis is
I
their
can see
guy.
that.
He's staying. He's captain. I kind of actually like that move, to be honest with you. I think like a bunch of the young guys looking up to him. Like, let's be honest, are they not going to be listening to that guy? Like, you know what I mean? Like, he's been around too, dude. You know what I mean? Like, he's a solid defensive defenseman. So the one guy I'm curious to see this year too is like, does Gibson finally get moved? Like, does Dostel just take that job from him? I know like Gibson's out for like at least the first couple weeks, right? So Dostel's got a chance to kind of like ride the net here. He proves like he's the goalie of the future, you know what I mean? But you definitely just hope for progression if you're a Ducks fan. I don't think they're anywhere near playoffs this year. I don't think they're a very good team, to be quite honest with you, but you just hope like some guys can just break out this year and turn into like star players.
Yeah, I'm with you on that. When you look at this team, it's a super young team. There's a lot of players that are going to be on their ELCs. It's just what progression can you get from them? I think they'll be young and exciting, like a similar team to Montreal, where they're super young, exciting to watch every night. They play super fast, but at the end of the day, I think I think they're gonna be too young and inexperienced to really compete for the playoffs. The other thing too is their goaltending scares me a little bit. Like even John, like you talk about John Gibson and like, is this a year he finally gets traded? For me, the thing I'm wondering about John Gibson is like, I straight up don't know what his value is right now. Like,
Yeah, it's
not,
hard,
not
man.
not in the sense that I don't think he has any value. It's just more like this guy at one point we thought was going to be like potentially a top five goalie in the league at one point, if not like a top 10 goalie. Where the last few years he hasn't been close to that, right? So it's like, uh,
Yeah, and I hate hearing the excuse that the Ducks are bad, and it's just like, dude, the Ducks were bad before, and he was good. So it's
yeah,
like, I just think
and
he's just tailed off. You know what I mean?
and
So,
there's other goalies on other
and the
teams
thing
that
is, it's
are
like he makes 6.4. Like, I'm sure the Ducks would retain, but it's like I think that's the problem, and I think that's why he hasn't been moved, dude. Is that the value is probably so off from the Ducks side to whatever team is
yeah.
interested, right?
Like for the Ducks, if they're moving him, I think they probably want like a first
See, I
at
wouldn't.
least.
That's where I'm like, no.
Where it's
Like
like
he's on the downhill.
if you're trading for him, like I don't think he's worth a first, but uh, it's just so hard to judge his value right now. But yeah,
Yeah.
for me, I have this Ducks team coming sixth. They'll be fun to watch, but they're just too young at the end of the day.
Curious to
Let's
see
move on.
Olin Zellweger.
Yeah,
That's one guy I'm curious to see this year.
he's gonna be fun. Let's move on to the other California team that we haven't gone to yet. It's the San Jose Sharks. This team, a little bit of movement. Philip Zadina, he's out of the NHL now. Mike Hoffman goes. Ty Emberson, we talked about earlier, he's gone. Same with Kalen Addison. They bring in Alex Wenberg, Tyler Toffoli, Barclay Goudreau, Jake Wallman, and Cody Ceci. So their movement reminds me a little bit of Chicago, where you're getting not like veteran serviceable players to bring into the lineup. So I sort of like the moves that they made over this offseason. How are you feeling about them?
Well, I mean, we're like, and that's also you're bringing in the first overall pick at Macklin Celebrini and Will Smith as well, the fourth overall pick from just a year before that. So you're bringing in some youth into the lineup too that I think is probably going to be like inserted into that top six like pretty quickly, if not right away. I really like the move bringing in Tyler Toffoli, to be honest with you, $6 million for 4 years. I think that he's a great guy to kind of mentor these young guys coming in, even bringing in guys like Wallman, and we've been critical of Cody Ceci, but I think he can help the young core, like this
Yeah.
young D core, and kind of eat up minutes that he has before as well. Kind of take the load off Mario Ferraro. He's playing a ton of minutes just because of how inexperienced the Sharks are. Like one other big name they brought in, we talked about the team earlier, is Askarov. They're looking at him to be the goalie of the future. How much does he play this season? I'm really curious to see that. He's sent to the AHL. I know the whole thing before is how he wouldn't report to Milwaukee. I believe that there's an agreement in place that he's going to be called up a little bit into the season. I think it was more or less because he didn't really participate much in camp because he had an injury, that it's more like we want to send you down, get a camp in, play a couple games, and then we'll bring you up. Like
Yeah, it's
that's
more
just
like
what I think is going to happen personally. Because I think they don't really have a lot to lose. It's like even if they run three goalies for a while, it's like, dude, who gives a shit? Like they're not going to be that good. Like may as well get the kids some NHL experience. And then with Vanacek and Blackwood, they're both fighting for contracts next year as well. So if one of them plays well, maybe one of them's back. So there's going to be some internal competition there in their crease as well. I think this team's going to be improved a little bit. I still think this is a terrible division. I've got them coming in seventh in this division ahead of your Calgary Flames. I don't think it's going to be by much. I just don't think that both teams are going to be very good. But I'm actually very interested to watch this team, not just Celebrini. Curious to see how Will Smith is going to adapt to the NHL level. Is he playing center? Is he playing wing right away? But this team is definitely a little bit better on paper. So another guy I really want to keep an eye on this year is Fabian Zetterlund. He had 24
yeah.
goals for the Sharks last year. He was in that Timo Meier deal. So they get that Muka Medulin defenseman who might get a shot in the NHL this year, and they get this Zetterlund kid. I know it's not Timo Meier, but like, man, that's a pretty decent return. Like, you know what I mean? Like if Zetterlund's scoring 30 goals. So he's one guy I'm definitely going to have my eye on this year. They just don't have a lot of flexibility to trade guys like at the deadline and get good stuff back. They've used all their retention slots, so they can't even like trade a guy half retained and you know what I mean, get full value for him. So I don't know. I don't really see them like much change happening in this roster throughout the entire season, I guess. And I think they're just going to be like a lottery team again, like probably picking in the top five.
Yeah, see, I have this team finishing at the bottom of the division. Honestly, like looking at the Flames roster and compared to this roster, I think these guys are a little bit worse here. Like they just the depth. I don't like their depth that much. I don't. Their top players too are fairly young, right? Like outside of Tyler Toffoli and Granlund, when you look at the top players, it's Zetterlund, Smith, Celebrini, and Eklund, right? Like these are all guys that are below the age of 24, 25 years old. So it's like it's a super young and inexperienced team. I'm excited to see though what their younger players can do, right? Like I know you talked about Zetterlund there. Eklund, he sort of had it like he had
Yeah.
a sneaky good season last year, and I want to see what he can
40
build off of
points, I
that.
think.
I want to can he be a 60-point player this year?
He was a
55
top 10
maybe?
pick, man.
Yeah, like he looks like he could be a pretty good player.
He's
You're
been
starting
kind
to
of forgotten about a little bit since he's been drafted, and he's had a pretty smooth development.
yeah.
Like, and
Well,
I don't think people really noticed it that much.
the thing with him was he was the first pick, like he was the first like high end pick that San Jose had, right? On like
Yeah.
it was like when they went to the rebuild, he was sort of the first pick and he was by himself there. Where now that they're getting this younger core, you're starting to sort of notice him a bit more because you have all these other younger
Yeah, like,
players
dude,
there.
does he become like a legitimate top six forward this year? Like,
I could
he
see it.
might.
I could see it. Like
Like, it's
he's
good
gonna be playing with
progression from him. You
Celebrini
know
and
what I
Smith,
mean?
right? He's gonna be given some opportunity here. You're like with San Jose, the thing you're seeing the most this year compared to last year you weren't really seeing the future or the vision. Like you weren't really seeing those pieces that much. Where it's like this year, now that you have Celebrini and Smith coming in, you're starting to see that. Like okay, San Jose, they have some decent building blocks here, right? Like those four players I just mentioned, those are some good building blocks. I still think they need some more building blocks. So I have them finishing eighth. I think they'll be picking top five around there again this season.
Yeah, but I think that they're heading in the right direction in the sense
Oh,
that they
for sure.
are probably not going to be picking or they're going to be picking very high the next couple of years as well. Probably not first overall again, but they have the chance to add to this prospect pool. You know what I mean? They've still got some pretty solid players that aren't
Yep.
in the NHL or even the AHL yet, in like Sam Dickinson and Quentin Musty, and like there's other guys that they have like that are like, I don't want to say outside of the organization, but like they're more in junior and stuff like that, right? That could make a big impact on this team in a couple of years. And I think that honestly, it's pretty impressive what Greer has been able to do in this short span, like this whole asset management thing. Even like, dude, I think like honestly, man, even if Askarov doesn't work out, like I think the risk was just worth it.
Oh, for
Where it's
sure.
like they have no freaking goalies in their pipeline, like at all. They have to rely on signing someone or drafting another guy, which could take so long. This guy is, you can debate if he's NHL ready or not, but it's like, regardless, he's like probably within a year or two. And it's like, by the time you're competitive, he's going to have a couple years under his belt still. And he could be a goalie that's at near the top of his game. Like,
He
you know
fits
what I
in
mean? Like,
perfectly
I
with
think
his
it's
timeline.
such a great move for them, man.
Yeah, I love it, man. Like looking at the asset management, dude. Like this is a goalie that was, what did he go? 13th overall? I believe it. I
Something
believe it was.
around, yeah,
It was like
around
13th,
there.
12th, 14th. It was in the lottery. He went top 15 for sure, right? So it's like for San Jose, you're getting a goalie that went that high without having to use a like that high of a pick on him, right?
Yeah.
Like I love that they brought him in. I think they'll be fun to watch this year. They'll be interesting, but I just think they're too young and inexperienced, and their depth doesn't really scare me at all. Their goaltending, we don't know what it's going to be. That's just why I have them finishing at the bottom of the division, to be honest. Um, Overall though, like we spent a lot of time today breaking down these divisions. I had a great time doing both these divisions and last week doing the Eastern Conference. I know we're gonna be pumped up watching these games tomorrow night. Next week we'll be back. I'm thinking next week, even though we're sort of into the season, we'll be doing some trophy and hardware predictions. We haven't really done that this year. We did that last year. Unfortunately, just with how long these episodes have been and really breaking down these conferences and divisions, we just haven't had the time to do it. So stay tuned for next week for some hardware predictions and just to catch up on sort of all the information that's been happening in week 1 of the NHL.